Hello and welcome to round 3 of the ZRL Premier Division. Last week saw the world's best men's and women's teams competing on the deceptively tough Caspat circuit in virtual France. Today we're in Watopia and the Two Bridges Loop. I have a suspicion that this one might be pretty tough too. The men are racing first tonight and then the women are up second. Joining me once again in the studio and on commentary duties as well is Hannah Walker. Hi Hannah.
Hello, already into another week.
Absolutely, yeah. Now, we've got to start, haven't we, with an update on last week. So having taken the individual win in the men's race, Stefan Kirchmeier put his hand up and said he'd made a mistake with his weigh-in, and so his results had to be scratched, Hannah.
Yeah, a huge shame. However, rules are rules, and all riders know that coming into the ZRL before the season starts, they know the rules coming into the Premier Division. To keep the legitimacy and the transparency, all riders have to provide the dual power recordings, the weigh-ins, which they have to send within 2 hours before the start of the race. So, for Stefan Kirchmeier, full credit to him though, that he noticed his mistake. He's contacted the ZRL, he's let them know, and unfortunately for him, his first place had been taken off him. But full credit to him. But it's great to keep the transparency here within the ZRL Premier Division. Yeah,
well, you can't get more transparent than a rider putting their hand up for their own mistake, can you? He's got to be kicking himself though, hasn't he?
Certainly.
Because weight, it's not all important, is it? So actually, his results could well have stood regardless. But as you said, rules are rules, and fair play to him for putting his hand up rather than trying to get away with it and hoping that he could escape the authorities. Now, the outcome of this, of course, is that it has had a small impact in the results. So we'll recap firstly the results from last week. Then you can see that Next Esport PB Enshored dominated that race. Canyon Esports a fairly distant second actually, and then BZR Sports Solid have moved up to third. Movistar in fourth, and World Elite Zwifters, powered by Oral 7, are now up in fifth place. So, in terms of the overall results, you can see Next Esports have a clean sweep of victories at the top so far, with victories in round 1 and 2. But Canyon Esports, second in both, they're still just 2 points behind at the top of the standings. Movistar slightly more distant with 35 points in third. Now, we will head over and look more closely at what is in store for the racers this week. As mentioned, the riders are facing the Two Bridges Loop in Zwift's spiritual home of Watopia. It's actually the first time our riders will be facing this particular circuit because of a recently introduced section of road. The lap starts with a rolling road with some short punchy ramps before descending down to the one and only intermediate sprint per lap. After that, the riders will get ready for the steep lower slopes of the hilly KOM before a very fast descent to the finish. Each lap is 7.3 k's long and the riders are facing 6 of them, giving a total race distance of 42.85 kilometres. Not quite as long as last week, but although there are no prolonged climbs, the total amount of altitude gained this week is more than round 2, so expect plenty of cracks in the peloton and from early on in the race. Indeed. Hannah, when we were chatting earlier, Matt Stevens, who will be joining in commentary very shortly, described this one as fizzy, didn't he? And you know what? I think he's bang on. I think this race is going to be bubbling over from the gun. In terms of who we should be looking out for, I guess the big favourites are going to be Next Esports, powered by Enshored, aren't they? To
be winning so dominantly over the last 2 weeks, and especially the overall standings last week, to see the margin in which they won by, putting a lot of their efforts into the big points on the finish line, and that's what's working for them at the moment. We see teams come in with their strategy, their plan. They don't play to another team's strategy, which I think is really important to focus on yourselves and work to your team's strengths with the riders you've got.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, isn't it? They've been very dominant in the results, but actually, whilst watching the racing, they've been almost absent, haven't they? They're really, really good at hiding and saving it for where it matters most. Whereas in contrast, not far behind in the overall standings, we've got Canyon Esports. Now, they race very differently to Next, don't they? If the race was won in intermediate sprints, they'd have demolished both races so far. Why do you think they're using those tactics?
Complete opposite, isn't it, more or less, between the two teams. I think for Canyon Esports, they don't want to solely rely on the finish with those big points. They want to make sure that they're getting points on the board early on, consistently in those intermediate sprints to try and shake things up. And if you never know what's going to happen coming to the finish, do you? If you have a technical problem, if you run out of legs, if there's a small group that gets away and you're unable to bring the breakaway back, that's all those big points gone. So I think for Canyon Esports, let's not forget, they're already the champions from the last 3 seasons. So they certainly know their strategy, what works for them. And as I said before, it's important to keep to what your team is strong at doing. Yeah,
it's like an insurance policy, I guess, isn't it? As you say, they've witnessed the previous 3 seasons. I guess they've seen how consistency is key and how one poor round and your position in the overalls goes up in smoke, doesn't it, really? I did actually catch up with their team manager, Reece Howell, earlier, who said that the reason they're doing those tactics, really, is they're playing to their strengths and maximising the impact of their 2 biggest riders. That's Ollie Jones and Lionel Vujacic, who you will undoubtedly see up there in the mix for the intermediate sprints as well. And it's worth saying as well, there are more intermediate sprint points on offer this week than there were last week as well. Now, another team that's been animating the racing over the last 2 weeks is World Elite Zwifters. So they've had a 7th and a 5th place, haven't they? And their Argentinian rider, Leandro Messinho, was off the front attacking in the closing stages of last week. You won't recognise him here because his avatar in Zwift has a massive bouffant, doesn't it? But they've got a really diverse team in terms of geography.
Hugely diverse, with across 3 different continents, South America, over in Oceania, North America as well. So for that team to be racing different continents, different countries, different time zones, to be coming together and performing so well, I think that's the beauty of esports on Zwift, isn't it? That where else could you have riders on all corners, shall we say, of the globe, and still be able to perform so well? And I want to say, I think Leonardo needs to get a wig to racing, doesn't he? just to mimic his avatar.
That's right, yeah. Now, you almost said all continents, and I was going to correct you because I don't think there is anyone racing in Antarctica in the ZRL at the minute. But we did hear that there was a guy from the British Antarctic Survey that was attempting an Everesting on Zwift whilst in Antarctica, which I thought was super cool. I don't know how he's got on, actually. He's gone a bit silent, but anyway, we'll find that out. Now, Hannah, who are you going to put your money on, individual and team, for this men's race?
It's a really tough one tonight with the amount of elevation coming. We've got the relatively short laps. It's going to be fast. We've seen the intermediate sprints have really split things up. It's not necessarily always been the climb that's done the damage. But for me, I think as a rider who can recover very, very well, who is able to go for the intermediate sprints while still having something, well, a lot left for the finish, Ollie Jones for the individual for me tonight. And I just think Next Esports, powered by Enshored, the way they're going, the team that they have, the lineup, they have so many options and it's just working for them. And if they keep and they stick to their own strategy, I think they'll come out on top again tonight. Yeah, right. Well, you can see the riders behind us warming up there. I'm going to go for James Barnes, actually, as the individual and next for the team. But we don't have to wait long. Let's head over to Matt and Dave in the commentary booth. We'll join them now.
Thank you very much indeed, Si. Thank you very much indeed, Hannah. Cannot wait for this race to get underway. It should be an absolute classic, and I did say that before to Simon. This should be effervescent, it should be fizzy, it should be action-packed, and of course, for the first time this season, we are in Watopia. We are on the Two Bridges Loop. I rode it earlier on for the first time ever, and it is an interesting little circuit with a bit of everything. I do think it's going to be an attritional race, but a fast one too. There we go, week 3. That's the name of the course. Two Bridges Loop, 6 laps, a total distance, as you can see there, of 42.85 kilometres, almost double the elevation of last week at 484 metres. And we have the classic power-ups, Aero, Draft and Feather. More about those a little bit later on because we're in the pens. We've got about 10 seconds to go. And I think that's a pretty decent time, actually, to introduce my co-commentator. As ever, it is the legend that is Mr. Dave Tao. Dave, great to have you along. First time in Watopia. We're about to go. I think we're 3 seconds underway. We are racing. But, Dave, this is going to be a very, very interesting circuit indeed. Interesting to, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for us to predict, but it's going to be action-packed. That is for sure.
Yeah, I would agree, Matt. The one thing that's for sure, it'll be that best sprinter left. I don't know that the group coming to the finish line will be larger than 20 riders, to tell you the truth. Now, we're going to be doing 6 laps out here today, and that actually begins the first lap. There's a little bit of a run in there, 7.3 kilometers per, and it's going to be an absolute Donnybrook from the get-go. We've talked a lot about the Next team and the Canyon team and how they try to dissect these races differently. At the end of the day, it's how many points your team is able to put together. I'm going to expect today, Matt, that Canyon really tries to get out in front of this one, knowing the force that Next Enshored has in the finale. Canyon's going to try to make sure that there's not as many Next guys around. It's going to be really interesting when we look at that top 10. There are a lot of sprint points. I guess, Matt, before I throw it back to you, let's talk about how significant these bonus sprints are going to be. They come up 6 different times, so not only are you picking up a power-up, but hopefully your team will be able to capture some points here, and the first sprint comes up very, very quickly here today.
It does. It's called the Two Bridges Loop, and the first of these sprints comes up in around 2 or 3 kilometers time, but we've got this very difficult section coming up. This is one of the numerous parts on this circuit where we've got to climb. It's just leveling out now. That normally is the finish in the other direction, so many of you who've been ridden on Zwift on multiple occasions will recognize this circuit, but perhaps not in the opposite direction. It's not particularly popular the other way. We're just entering now into the S's as well. This is essentially a mini roller coaster, very, very difficult to follow the wheel so much on this section, because Dave, it's one of the hardest parts in all of Zwift, I think, all the different worlds in Zwift, to get the pacing right, because it ebbs and flows for about 1.5 kilometers. It doesn't look technical, but it really, really is.
They talk about Matt Fortune favoring the brave, and man, in the S's, it's more true than ever. This sector of the course in the last 2 laps is going to be decisive. If you see a move slipping away, it could very well happen right here. And again, now with the sprint coming up very, very quickly, it really log it at about 2.7K in, and I think they're already attacking out of this group. It's old school fury out here today. What a phenomenal course this is to race on, as we're going to be looking for some of the big names, the closers. Who's going to be left today, because these moments are going to make things tough. Expect to see this group whittled down over these first couple of laps. Matt, taking a look, though, it looks like it's going to be a pretty classic sprint the first time. We've got one World Elite Zwifter rider off the front, but they brought him back into the fold here as we hit the reset button with about 500 meters until it's a first throwdown out here today on the Two Bridges Loop.
Yeah, they drop over the top of this, carrying, it's interesting, they carry a lot of pace into both sections on this course where you'll get your power-ups. The first one, as you can see, just over the water on the left-hand side. They are approaching the bridge. This is the JW Bridge Sprint, the first opportunity, only 2.8 kilometers into this circuit to get points. Remember, as Dave said at the top of the show, it is all about the accumulation of points. And we've got Toshiaki Megawa, who's just gone clear. The Japanese rider for Zwift Warrior Cycling. He's going to be overhauled on the line, though, by Polly. And Kirkmare is also there in the mix. Very close to rush for the line. We'll get confirmation of that, but it looked like it was Kirkmare who took that one. Indeed, it was Daniel, sorry. Daniel came very, very late indeed. Ollie Jones in second. Then we have Polly, Kirkmare, Farup, Jaeger, Rosti Omdal, and then team of the Bs of the final team on the end there. That's 8 spots. And for the first time, you've seen how many points are on offer. So lots and lots of points, a maximum of 60 points if you were to win these sprints out on the road. They're straight into the Italian villas on a little bit of pave here, and very, very active early on. A few little ride-ons going. Remember, if you're watching this in the comfort of your home, but you do have your mobile phone nearby, please use your Zwift companion app just to fire up a little bit of ride-on action for these riders. Let's have a little look at that the first sprint of the day, Dave. A little bit of an action replay coming up very, very shortly. They hit this so quick, Dave.
Yeah, the teams can't afford to not contest these early bonus sprints out here. And that is going to be Daniel, the Swedish Zwifter rider. So it's an interesting mix of teams out there as well. As you start to look for that green jersey of the Next team, you can see them assembling up near the front. A rider to watch today, and we haven't talked much about the BZR team, the all-Belgian team, but Matthias de Roos. I have a feeling he's going to find his way into the top 5, if not better, in this field. We start looking around at the riders. that have got that wicked speed closing out the deal. There's Matteo Cigala, the Italian who lives in Ireland now, moving up to the front. Expect this race to be sub 50 minutes out here today as well. The fastest lap that we've seen by any of our riders in this field, Joachim Leeson, who's a big talent, was able to get around in 8 minutes and 30 seconds. He was making 325 watts when he did that. But remembering that you've got the entire peloton of riders with that level of ability, they are going to be flat out flying today. Even with 484 meters of climbing, the speed should be very, very close to 50 kilometers per hour.
There we go, David. It is going to be quick, that's for sure. Thanks for those stats. Crossing the 360 degree or 360 bridge, because you can see everything for a pretty long time if you look backwards to the west and to the east, north and south. But just up ahead you can see the giant two cyclists there, those big monuments. That is where they're heading. This is the only significant climb on the circuit. This is a very, very rolling up and down circuit. I think the best description is a classic style, super punchy, but this is the hardest climb on the circuit. It starts up at 2%. Look at the top right-hand side of your screen. That is where you'll see the elevation, and already the shape of this group starting to change. This one ratchets up ever so gradually until we hit that first hairpin on the right-hand side. Then the road really kicks up to 8, maxing out at 10%. It's going to be around a 45-50 second effort and some big, big numbers, as you would expect already. Paul Odelin on the front for World of Elite Zwifters, 6.8 watts a kilo. Duffy Jr. also there as well, and lots of numbers in the red, as you'd expect. This is where we're coming to the steepest section, 10%. It briefly flattens, and this is where we then do this left-hand turn before we drop down into the finish again. So already, Dave, we've nearly completed the first lap. 5.5 Ks done. A real illustration of how quickly these laps are going to tick by, and the peloton already stretched out significantly.
The Danish rider, the former police officer, Michael Knudsen there, who was on the podium at the World Championships last December, really lifting the pace right now. Only the strong are going to survive after this huge effort. Look at the group now. From tip to tail, it is strung out. There's going to be multiple splits happening. It is, here we go. It is on like Donkey Kong as Eddie Uhl, the South African, now moving to the front. These are some of the big names that we're looking for here in the ZRL, and they're going to make this now. We've talked about the super tuck. You need to be going over 58 kilometers per hour. The gradient needs to be 3% or greater as far as the descent, and then you need to stop making power. You got to be under 11 watts. And it looks like right now we're already seeing some riders getting tailed off the back of this group, Matt.
We certainly are. I thought it would split or at least stretch out a little bit. I was just checking the stats on the length of that bunch, Dave. It was around spread over 10 seconds over the top of that climb. As you can see, the shape has changed yet again as we look at the acquisition of points. Total team of Swedish Zwifters with 10, Toyota with 8, Canyon also with 8 points. And we have Callas, Kirkmail, Restart and Beast Mode. Powered by Rose, just rolling through in that black and orange kit. Now the finishing line, they're going to be carrying a lot of pace. As we saw, Dave eloquently described the details of the Super Tuck. Now that is important, but not only when to get into a Super Tuck, but because this finish comes so close to the bottom of the descent, it's when to lay on the power. And as you can see, 100 meters to go now. That in game, when you're riding in game, the finishing line doesn't come into view until around 160, 150 meters to go. So these riders are going to have to know this course like the back of their hand and also understand the best way to carry that momentum out of the Super Tuck and hopefully have one of the numerous power-ups we have available, Dave. So we've got one lap down. That went very, very quickly indeed. 5 laps to go. The riders have 2 opportunities on this circuit to gain power-ups. That's through the sprint arch, which comes around halfway around the circuit, and they just passed through the finishing arch there. That's the other opportunity. But Dave's a reminder of the aero, draft and feather power-up before things start to ramp up for us.
Yeah, well, great time to do that because they are absolutely going to come into play out here today, Matt. When you see that helmet power up, that's aero. We're talking about your CDA, your coefficient of drag of frontal area, and for 15 seconds, you'll see that reduced. The feather, well, that's all about weight. 10% taken off of your body weight for 15 seconds, you could see how that would make a huge impact on the feature climb of the course out here. And then when you see that van, that's all about drafting. 50% increase in the draft that you're feeling, and it extends for 30 seconds out there. So those are the big three. That's the trifecta of power-ups that we have, and the riders will be very, very familiar with them. Unlike last week's Anvil, which wreaked havoc, Matt. It was bananas out there with, but let's go back to the action here.
Sorry, Dave. No, it was fun with the anvil, but I tell you what, this is a man that can smash an anvil. This is Leonard Tugels. He's an absolute powerhouse, one of the most aggressive riders last week, so strong. He's an exceptional performer out on the road, has had a really solid season riding some of the classics and the semi-classics in Belgium, and will really love this course because it is reminiscent as best it can be of the roads in West Flanders, up and down, short, steep, punchy climbs. He put out last week, he just finished inside the top 20, Dave, but he was the joint highest power to weight ratio last week, 5 watts a kilo average for nearly an hour in France. And he's got that kind of ability to really try and split things up here, that style that we're so used to, out of the saddle, trying to smooth out these awful roller coaster sections. And he's opened up a good gap. 2.5 seconds on Jan Rodzik and Davis, and 5 seconds, Dave, on the group behind. And this course really does lend itself to aggressive racing.
Well, certainly one of the most dangerous riders in the ZRL is the Belgian, and I mentioned his teammate Matthias de Roos earlier. They make for a really strong squad. I mean, they're sitting in 4th with a 14th and an 18th as far as looking back on their placing so far in the earlier 2 rounds. Now, Leonard Tugel should hold on to pick up 10 points at this bonus. It comes up at around 10K, a little bit less than that, and he's doing significant damage out here now. As Jaden Yeager, the rider out of the United States, sitting back there, well, you can see that everyone is over 5 seconds back right now. So this is a very dangerous move from Leonard Tugels, the Belgian on BZR.
He's absolutely flying. Great picture there. No top, out of the saddle, no hat either. He's going to take the points on this sprint. So the BZR rider is going to take maximum points. He gets 10 points across the line here. And what we do know is that he can keep this effort going. He's got those points. Now, is he going to ease up? He has eased up, actually. He's been caught by the group who've gone straight by him. But this was the tactic he employed last week, David. He took both of the King of the Mountains. There is confirmation. Turgles takes maximum points there. Then we have Worm, Nielsen, Vujasan, the first time he has emerged to take points today for Canyon. Thiem and Voits, Leeson and Takado Ikeda of the team of Team Zwift as well, just at the back there. But good ride by Turgles, and this is a familiar characteristic of him, isn't it? Really eager to go clear, but can back it up. Team Swedish Swifters with 18, Canyon Esports with 16, and BZR with 10. This is the best we've seen, Dave, Team Swedish Swifters do on these intermediate points, especially, we've never really seen them do anything quite like this before. Good riding by them so far tonight.
Yeah, and it's interesting, Matt, you never really know how Canyon is going to approach the race. And I think today it's pretty clear that they're going to try to gobble up as many points as they possibly can in the early laps here and not wanting to leave it late, knowing the threat that a lot of these sprinters will provide. Group's still pretty large all in all right now, as we're just over, well, almost 11K into what's a 42, let's call it 43 kilometers of racing out here today. As we take a look at the peloton, a bit of a reprieve right now after that last Leonard Tugels attack. That one stung the legs.
It certainly did. Well, he's the kind of rider that I can almost guarantee, Dave, without seeing their tactical play, without being in communication with him, that he will attack later, because I think this course favours his attributes as we have our first look today. Right on cue, in fact, of one of our Team Swedish Zwifters. That's John Verm. Just in that group there, 230 watts. Got a nice double fan system there, Dave. That's not a fan system I've seen before. So cooling from the left, cooling from the right as well. Not perhaps as cooling as our rider that Simon mentioned earlier on in Antarctica. I think I have ridden with him a few times out on Zwift. But no, he's looking good there. 44 ride-ons for John Worm. And a reminder, please do get behind these riders. Get involved in the comments on YouTube, down underneath here on GCN Racing. Subscribe in the process as well. But please let it be known your support for these riders. But it's all bunched up again. There's 70 riders, Dave, in this front group. We've already lost around 30 riders in the opening lap and a half. Just shows how hard this race is. And I think next time up this climb, we're going to shed even more.
John Worm doing a really good job positioning himself up in the peloton here, ready for what should be another surge. And it looks like World Elite Zwifter. So Paul Odlin here is one of the riders that is, I would say, has a solid trajectory right now as Odlin has become more of a force out here. Watch out for World Elite Zwifters today as you take a look at this peloton. It's going to be Toyota Cryo moving to the front with Van D.
Yeah,
Still kind of looking, Matt, at, for that Canyon jersey versus the Next jersey. And it looks like right now, even though Canyon has picked up more bonus points, Next hanging in there as well.
Yeah, we have a look at the stats of Kjetil Farup. You can just see a couple of riders who've been tailed off already. This is the lower slopes of the climb. As a reminder, we're looking at it from a slightly different camera angle here. Look at the top right of your screen. You can tell the slope from this rather interesting camera angle. We've got beautiful views of the Zwift Alps in the distance, but this is the small little Alp that we're climbing up now. Eases off to 6%. Few riders already being tailed off. You're needing to hold around 8 or 9 watts per kilo to get over this climb in the front group. Gledner's up there. Recknauer, Lenny Turgles as well. Yip also in the mix. Gould, Misenio, all of the key riders are there. This is this new little bit of tarmac. I rode this for the very first time. Just cuts off the top draggy part of the climb in that direction and takes us halfway down the descent. We will pick up this pace very, very quickly indeed. Another opportunity for riders, if they haven't done it, to really test out the right point, to really lay on the power after getting out of that super tuck. As they just move round to the left-hand side, you can just see the archway denoting a 1 kilometre still to go. But Davies has now gone clear. So Davies has jumped clear on the climb here, on the descent, shall I say. The Welshman from Wahoo Lacol, he's only opened up a very, very narrow lead. And this group, Dave, has really thinned out on that climb again. 1 kilometre till we get 4 Ks to go.
Howell Davies there, aggressive for Wahoo Lacol. Good to see them on the front, Matt. This is a good look as far as reconnoitering the finish here as we've gone inside 1K to the finish line here on lap number 2 of 6. So this is really, you wonder how many riders will be in this group when we get down to the finale. It certainly won't be this large. As you can see, each time up that climb, riders are really paying a price. As you mentioned, making 8 watts per kilogram. You can only go to that well so many times before it's empty. And this is now really a good look at where the kick will really engage. No points at the finish line here. We are sprinting at an arch that's on the backside of the course. They will pick up another power up as they make their way through, so they'll be able to reload with either a helmet, a feather, or a van here. There is the finish truss.
Yes, indeed. And you got a good shot there of exactly, well, not quite exactly, but almost the same viewpoint of the riders as they pass through. 4 laps to go now as we look at Matthias de Roos. Fully unzipped, as you'd expect, 157 beats a minute, just dropping down to about 3 watts a kilo, so benefiting from that draft you get midway through this group. The centre of the bunch and also dropping towards the back is where you'll get the most benefit from draft, and this is one of the few flattest sections on this particular circuit where you need to try and get, or there's the opportunity, should I say, to get a little bit of a protection, a little bit of recuperation before the road starts to kick up through that rocky arch. And then we commence the S's once more. So there's about 68 riders in this front group. Now, we only lost 2 actually up that climb this time, Dave, so maybe not quite as quick, but I do think that riders are fully aware of the damage that can be caused on that climb, and they're going to be very, very mindful of that as we head towards the finish. But it will provide, I think, ample opportunity for those teams that want to rip this field apart or try and go clear.
Yeah, we just haven't gone quite all in yet on that climb. Now, here's a man that, well, winning last week and a huge threat out here today, looking incredibly comfortable all in all, is the Canadian Thomas Thrall. Thomas Thrall can make nearly 18 watts per kilo over a 15-second period. He is at the very, very high end of that wattage ladder, that's for sure, as you get a look at the Next Enshored jersey. The team celebrating a world championship for one of their community team members, Ashton Lambie. And here you go. This is going to be Jasper Peredains here hitting out. Look at the numbers up in the stratosphere. BZR firing on all cylinders out here today. Very, very impressive job. They've had the New Zealander Paul Odlin up near the front. They certainly, we just saw Matthias de Roos in cam, and this sprint comes up at 17.1, so about 1.5 kilometers. And I think that Jasper Peredains is gone for the moment here, Matt. I don't think they're going to be able to bring him back. You can see Jaden Yeager there moving up to the front. Johannes Breckenauer there is a teammate, or excuse me, is on the Kirkmeyer team, teammate of Stefan Kirkmeyer, and they're looking to right the ship out here today. So this is going to be, again, the Belgian rider Jasper Paradise with a nice gap.
He certainly has got a good gap, Dave. 4.9 seconds to be exact. Jaeger is the rider in between. Jed and Jaeger, the American, but with a 5-second gap, 6 or 7 seconds to Leonard Turgles, his teammate. So BZR, clearly, from what we can see here, have gone out with a tactic of attacking on the early slopes of the S's. We know how difficult it is to actually just ride that section and deliver the power effectively and efficiently. So chasing is even more difficult, and the gap is now going out. The big question for me is, will Jasper Paradines continue this effort through? Still holding 7 watts a kilo. Jaeger in no man's land in between. Jaeger looks if he's going to be reabsorbed. This is where the road starts to drop down, -5% gradient. There's only about 500 meters to go, so we can't afford even to back off a little bit. Swinging left on to the bridge now. Let's have a look at that finishing gantry. We're almost like on a moto looking at him from behind here. He's on to the bridge. Always going to have to be very, very careful, but I think he's going to hold on. He's just got more. No, he's going to be, well, very close on the line. He's going to be overhauled, I think he was there, Dave.
Yeah, wow. I think he did. That's Nicky Hoog coming through. And let's see, it is for next. Wow, look at that. As they also got Zach Nair up there. Ryan Larson will come through picking up the second place points. So you can see how they're going to be distributing here through our top 8. But wow, next timing that perfectly. Matt, they do their homework. This team has gone all in with esports racing here on Zwift, and it really, really shows. They just don't miss a trick out there. So, yeah, boy, I thought Paradines was away for sure, and I don't know that it was him easing up. Well, let's go back and take a look, actually, at that last bonus sprint.
Yeah, I don't think he actually eased up, Dave. I think he just ran out of gas. We got an interesting shot. This is, well, he was actually mopped up on the bridge itself, yeah, and didn't actually finish within the points. Only one rider from Canyon Esports in there in the mix. But as you said, Dave, quite correctly, the team that seems to be completely and utterly dialed every single race so far is Next Esports. And off the back of, we saw the images of Thomas Thrall as we look at the situation on the road. So Canyon Esports there with 19. 1 point ahead of Team Swedish Zwifters, and then 3 points clear of Next Esports. So not a bad night at all by Canyon Esports so far. BZR Sports solid in 4th, equal there with Zwift Warriors. But I had a chat after the finish with Tom Thrall, David, and I was saying, what's the secret? How have you been so successful so far this season? How have you made this leap? And he said, well, clearly we're all fit, we're all in good shape, but we recon the courses. We just keep riding and riding these courses. We get the feel for them. We'd ride them as a collective as we look at Nicky Hoog. And we just get into these courses and we know the routes like the back of our hand because the level's so high now, Dave, from a physical perspective, the next thing is to get the understanding of these courses. And clearly, that's what Next Esports have done better than anybody else, you could argue.
I would not argue that, that's for sure. I got to give Canyon the same kind of credit, doing their homework, coming prepared, as they don't just let this come to chance, that's for sure. It's not just showing up on Mondays and having an exercise contest. There's so much more that goes into this. I have to say, World Elite Zwifters, that blue jersey, they are really looking to make their mark out here today, and they have a good opportunity to with the quality of riders that they have. Now, when you look at it, Next and Canyon are virtually deadlocked right now on top of our points table. It is so critical. You just can't take a lap off out here as far as the sprints goes, and that last one certainly advantage to Next Enshored. We're starting to see now another bit of a wind up here. The next sprint isn't for a little while, 24.3K in. So I think, Matt, that the way we've been racing out here, they're going to back off for just a minute before they hit it hard. And this next time up the climb, it should be ballistic here. I'm expecting this group to split.
Yeah, we've lost another few riders. We're the lead group now down to 63. So every lap we're losing a handful of riders each time. And generally it comes off the back of this climb. Stats at the top right, there's the 4%. It kicks up to 5, 6%. Then round the corner, the gradient really starts to rise, and when you're in game, you can't actually see the top. It looks like this event horizon at the top of the climb. It's only short, but it isn't sweet. Voyasan now at the front. This is what he does best. A couple of other riders from his team also there. Turgles also trying to ramp things up over the climb as well. Oftedal has now gone clear as well. So a couple of teams getting in the mix, trying to rip things up. 5% just over the top. It then drops ever so slightly, And for around 100 metres, there's no descent at all. They've got this little nasty plateau, and that accentuates the damage that has been done over the top of this climb. But this is a clear attack by Knudsen as they enter, Dave, the bypass, and the descent beckons.
Michael, one of the real animators out here, his PO Auto team, they're really looking forward to the team time trial coming up in London in a couple of weeks. That's one of their specialties, as we can see now. Johannes Reckenauer is the rider, another rider with a lot of flair there as far as hairstyle goes, as we were certainly now identifying two real threats out here, and the South African on Toyota Cryo, Eddie Uhl, is leading the chase, and they're going to be reabsorbed here now. So you can see as they all drop into that Super Tech, the speed that the peloton is carrying. No couple riders are going to be able to hold off that group with just a handful of seconds in hand advantage there.
No, definitely not. Well, you saw where the kilometre to go flag was, just dropping down this descent. I think we've lost a few more riders as well. I did think that rider looked like he would have been the bass player for Limp Bizkit, to be perfectly honest with you, with the corn hairdo there. But anyway, pop groups from the 1990s to one side. We're entering downtown again. And this is a little series of S's before they're carrying a lot of speed here. They're going to be riding at about 50, 55 k's an hour. Remember, as Dave said at the top of the show, the fastest average speed for one rider on this circuit is just over 50 k's an hour. So we do think they're going to be averaging near or about that sort of speed, even for this kind of distance. But look in front. We still can't see the finish until now. 150 meters to go as we look at Johannes Reckenauer. Next time through the finishing gantry comes in only a few moments' time. We are at half distance. So 3 laps to go as Reckenauer just cruises along. Makes it very easy there, doesn't he? 263 watts. And he is the rider who's opted for that interesting hairdo. Perhaps he is a fan of nu metal. Who knows, Dave?
Well, I would have to agree, Matt, as far as there's definitely, you add Leandro Messinillo in there for another hairstyle, and you've got a complete band, that's for sure. Daniel Jemrosic moving up to the front. We start to see things settle down, but I do think the second half of this race is going to be faster than the first. As if you're a sprinter right now, you got to be pretty happy with the way things have played out. This is certainly not a climber's course, more of a power climber's course or a classic type course. As we take a look, though, at another attack off the front.
It's Jemrosic who's gone clear, 7.7 watts a kilo. He's opened up on this nasty little drag, around 3%, just going through the rock tunnel that takes us right into the S's. There's the stats of the American of Restart Racing. He's no stranger to attacking. The last couple of races, he's tried a little foray off the front, and this one's looking good. But this is a tactic that we've seen every single lap this race, Dave, so far. We've seen somebody attack on this section to try and steal a march ahead of this opening sprint. And this is a picture of Jemrosic. Interesting style, sort of climbs out of the saddle on the tops, has got the double fan situation going there. He's got a nice lead. 10 seconds is the lead for the American from Restart Racing. But you can't even see, just about saw the bunch behind. So clearly, Dave, this is a tactic. This is an idea of these riders, is to try and go long onto the S's because it's so hard to chase. Although last lap they got it a bit wrong, but this is a significant gap, the biggest gap we've seen all night. 12 seconds for the American.
Yeah, you'd think that this is enough. Certainly the physics and the game playing in Zwift gives a huge advantage to that peloton chasing. We watched, though, that split. Yeah, it's stabilized at about 13 seconds here, Matt. So it looks like Daniel Jemrosic is going to make a big play here for the Restart team through the middle part of this race. Actually, we're starting to move into the business end here. And, yeah, this gap remains constant. So Daniel Jemrosic, workhorse out there right now.
He's looking good. Knows how to finish well, was 10th place in the individual race last week. So no, he's got a very, very good finish on him because that was a big bunch sprint we saw. Well, an attritional bunch sprint, shall I say, from around 35 riders in that front group, but still holding steady at 13 seconds. The rest of the bunch averaging around 4 watts a kilo, but they're almost playing this one cagey. Complete contrast to the last lap. Who is chasing behind it is Martin Martins, Audryn Vullier of Restart. I would imagine he'll be just blocking a little bit, but this is a very, very good move. This might be the biggest individual time gap, Dave, we've seen in the men's racing So far this season, I don't think anybody's got quite this far into double digits, but Jamrozic is looking very, very smooth indeed. Great to see that picture in picture. Please do give this rider some ride on. He's only got 20 compared to John Worm with 63 because he's putting on a real show here, and he's just about to jump onto the bridge to the time section, quickly over the wood and then entering through, and he will definitely take maximum points. He's still holding a lead of 11 seconds, but it's shrinking rapidly as the bunch starts sprinting behind, Dave.
Yes, so they will be sprinting for the 8 points that we've got for the second place rider across the line. And it looks like Hiroki Ueda getting up there for Zwift Warrior Cycling. Christoph Thiem, Ollie Jones. You mentioned Martin Mertens. We'll see how that last sprint scores. But clearly, Daniel Jamrozic, who's there he is just coming back into the group. So that was a nice effort there to pick up 10 points for restart.
He's just got to make sure that he gets into the wheels. We saw a couple of riders who'd attacked really start to struggle. There's another attack straight over the top here. It looks like one of the World Elite Zwifters has tried to go clear. So Odlin has now gone clear. We talked about them at the top of the show, a team that are really, really tenacious, happy to attack as we look at the confirmation of that intermediate sprint. Zamrozic from Kalman, from Oya, Lorio, of Feldos, Van den Ickhout, and then Akida, and then Thiem with the final solitary point. But that solitary attack has been neutralized very, very quickly indeed. We've just exited the Italian villas. And what is the situation out on the road? Well, what a night, Dave. Team Swedish Zwifters with 24 points, usurping Canyon Esports, who led last time through. Fusion moving up into third as well. Next Esports in fourth. Restart Zwift, Warriors, Toyota Cryo, then the rest. So a good night so far for Team Swedish Zwifters.
I'm not surprised, Matt, to see the teams keeping the cards pretty close to the vest here, because it is going to be a very dynamic last couple of races. You said like a champagne cork being pulled. It is going to just be all over the shop by the time we hit that last lap. And right now, a huge group together. The teams that have been the most impressive this far, I would have to say, Swedish Zwifters makes that list, Matt. They're having a tremendous ride out here today. And it's not only Paul Odlin for that World Elite Zwifters team, but he so far has done a tremendous job of keeping the pressure off of his South American teammates. They have an Argentinian and a Brazilian on that team that are going to be looking to have a breakthrough win for the World Elite Zwifters squad. So, yeah, what a dynamic middle part of this race is. But really, it's been riders going out and points hunting, looking for those 10 bonus points. And we've got another sprint coming up at, well, it's a little ways away, to tell you the truth. 31.5K in is our next bonus opportunity out here.
Yeah, we've got the best part of a lap. We're just going over 360 bridge here. John Mayfield, one of the founders of Zwift, they've named this bridge after a bridge near his home, apparently. So you will see little touches from the founding guys who set up Zwift, little touches, little personal details. When you look at the game, the details, the graphic, the kind of graphic that have been rendered here in game, and also some of the significant names as we get this aerial view of this washing machine effect. Riders making sure they're trying to keep trying to save as much energy as they can. One rider who isn't saving energy is riding on the front where is Devola, who's happy to set the pace on the lower slopes of this climb, perhaps putting himself in a decent position, because as this bunch things out, the last place you want to be going over the top, because we've lost riders every single lap, is at the back. So a good idea, Dave, if you can, to give yourself just a little bit of sliding space, because the ability to save energy from drag really diminishes the slower they go on this climb.
Yeah, do a little bit of sag climbing out there if you're not feeling super confident at this point for some of our sprinters out there, although the strongmen haven't had too much trouble getting up this climb. As we take a look now at some new names moving up to the front, that's certainly not a new kit, as Wahoo Lacole and the Rose Beast Mode team. That's Jan Emmerich there, and Teppo Lorio, who became quite popular after his in-camera appearance out of Finland last week for Wahoo Lacole. Starting to see the Toyota Cryo jerseys moving up as well, and that certainly should have some alarm bells ringing. But the rider of note riding near the front right now, actually a couple of them, but certainly Brian Duffy Jr. is up there along with Johannes Reckenauer. These are two of the big names, and I get the feeling, Matt, we're just about to light a fuse out here.
We certainly are. This is Fabian de Overlap, looking good here. Just got into that super tight, as you can see. first time we've actually seen picture in picture what happens with a super tuck. You have to freewheel, or the maximum amount of watts you can put out before it engaging is 11
Look at the
watts.
deep breaths.
So it's best to, it says it's really using this opportunity to get a 15-second rest. And then, as you can see, really good picture in picture action there of the point that he is laying on the power again when the super tuck ends, getting into that slipstream and understanding the best way to deliver power. And believe you me, riders would have practiced this time and time again, either with their group or on their own. But it does change. The dynamics change so much when you are riding in a group. You can carry a lot more speed. It is very different than riding individually.
Matt, I think it's well worth noting that just because you can super tuck at the end of a run doesn't mean you should be. As you'll see, the smarter riders will start getting back on the gas. Even though they could remain in that super tuck, they realize that they're going to be moving faster if they hit it. And here we go. Speaking of hitting it, you know it's only a matter of time until the teams start trying to impact the race for the finale. PO Auto is a team I have a feeling that will be involved in these late race attacks as we get another look as we complete lap 4 of 6. So 2 to go as they head through, each lap at 7.3K each.
Yes, indeed. Now, Dave, I must admit, that was the first lap, Dave, of 4 where we haven't lost anybody from the bunch. Most laps we've lost 5 or 6, 10 people every lap. That was the only lap we've not seen anybody go, as Jambrozic is attacking again, clearly recovered after an exploits last lap. His tenure on the front is going to be a short one, though, because I think he's going to be brought back very shortly. But this has been a lot more tactical, Dave, than I thought. I thought they would attack that lap a little bit harder, but it clearly, they fear that climb, I think, and they're going to use their energies towards the back end of this race. This is like a champagne bottle that's been shaken and shaken and shaken, but nobody wants to pop the top just yet.
Well, and I tell you what, when they do, it's going to be complete pandemonium. To tell you the truth, Matt, this race has been a little more relaxed, actually, than I thought it would be. We've seen some solo attacks, but at this point now, we've got a lot of fresh riders, and they're going to be looking to do extensive damage. And when the hammer drops, it's going to be massive. Leonard Tugels back on the attack here. Tugels has been relentless out here today. This is Leonard Tugels and his BZR team really trying to take a step forward here in the ZRL. And I got to say, Matt, I think they've done a tremendous job of trying to set the table. And the question becomes, can Mateus de Roos lick his plate clean? This is Leonard Tugels that we're in camera with now, but I think they're trying to do some setup work here for de Roos in the finale.
Yeah, they're certainly not letting him go this time. We've got Nair, Recknauer, Segerbrook all chasing Vidar Mel as well, as we see a rider just lap there. So this is a little bit harder here, completely different lap than last time when Jambrozic was allowed a little bit of headway, but Leonard Tugels is having to work very, very hard. But of all the riders in this field, the 28-year-old Belgian has got the ability to stay away. He's done it before. He did it last week in France on 2 separate occasions, dominating the King of the Mountains. No KOMs today. It is just this sprint, but he only holds a narrow lead, and we saw that on the last couple of laps, how quickly the bunch can make gains on a solitary rider out in front as we enter midway through these S's. Look at this up and down, twisting and turning. It can be quite discombobulating in game with the visuals here. It throws you off a little bit. It's quite difficult to control or to get this. You get this almost like a bit of motion sickness as well as the physical demands of this section. It's one of my favorite bits on Watopia. But look at this. He's managed to eke out, chip away, and opened up this lead of 6.2 seconds. This is the highest part of the S's. He's just getting to this now, Dave, and it's about 500 meters to the sprint.
Yeah, and this is going to be really interesting. If Leonard Tugels can't hang on, no one could. He is one of the most talented breakaway artists that we've got in this race. I look at Christoph Thiem, the German rider on beast mode, is another rider in. If those two could get together off of the front, I think the threat would be massive. That's going to be Harvar Jeldness there, rider who's a previous winner in the ZRL. Spencer Segerbruch doing some work for the Canyon team out here right now, and I see Vidar Mel is moving up, but Leonard Tugels is going to hold on and pick up 10 bonus points here in our penultimate a chance to get those 10 points out here. And Tugels does grab them. Looks like a technical issue. One of the Wahoo Gold Riders as we jump back in with Tugels here.
Yeah, Tugels takes the points there from Team Swedish Zwifters. Verm, Mel, there, Voets, Ofdal, Jager, and Van den Eickhout for Cryo. But just look how quickly that Leonard Tugels is going back. This is where he really needs to make sure he gets on somebody's wheel after that big effort. It's like a 2.5 minute effort he spent out in front, but this group has split just going through this rocky section here on to the brief section of cobbles through the Italian villas. Then the road kicks up again. Let's try and have a look at the damage that has been caused on that particular section. That was a lot harder than people think. I think a few riders have been shaken out here. We've got, 58 riders back in the group. Let's have a look at that replay. No doubt, Dave, about the winner, though.
Yeah, so he had an advantage of about 6 seconds at the max and able to hold on quite handily there. But then you see that we were in camera with the Swedish Zwifters rider, John Verm, and he's having a phenomenal day. And he looked quite comfortable. And you can see we're back in with the vanguard of the race now out on the 5th lap. It's quite a mix, but a lot of green on the front there. The Next Enshored team, it looks like it's time for the regulators to mount up right now, Matt. Here we go. Taking a look at those points, Swedish Zwifters, commanding lead at this. Well, actually, there's no such thing as a commanding lead at this point with all of the points waiting at the finish line here, but 32 points for the Swedes. Canyon Esports having a great ride today. They got to be pretty happy to be sitting 2 points ahead of Next Enshored right now with BZR Sports Solid, and those 10 points that Leonard Tugel's just picked up sitting there in their 20-point tally. Fusion ECT with 18. Matt, back to you as we're getting right down to brass tacks here.
Indeed. Well, Odlin now on the front. Yeah, I don't think I've ever seen in the men's team Swedish Zwifters dominate or have such a solid night in the points, but they've, without winning, I don't think they've actually won one. I think they've just consistently placed riders up there, and they've ridden exceptionally well from a tactical perspective, timed all of their sprints to perfection as we have our first look at Vidar Mel today. As you'd expect from the Movistar Esports team, very, very nice setup on his Canyon there, lovely corporate backdrop. And Vidar Mel, very experienced indeed, a former Norwegian Zwift champion. Happy to sit at or near the front. He knows that this time up could be critical. This is the penultimate time up this climb. It's only short, but it's very, very steep. And last time I thought they dialed it back a little bit, Dave. I'm sure riders are either, they've got two opportunities. They either smash it this time up or it's all in. Final time up. I'm not too sure which one I'm going to call, because we'll see the shape of the bunch change very, very quickly indeed if anybody wants to go on the offensive. I've just got a feeling that maybe there's too much to gain on the descent, and it's just too hard to get away.
I would agree. I think that they're going to keep the powder dry, relatively dry. I mean, there's no easy trip up this climb.
Yeah, Vidar Mel on the front there. It's bunching across the road. Nobody really wanting to take this up. And just look at the watts per kilo. Nobody has gone into the red apart from Emmerich, 8.3. So last time and the time before that, we saw a lot more red in colour. A lot more riders tipping above the 8 watts a kilo, and that's what turns these numbers orange. But just coming over the top of the climb at its steepest section, although it's eased now, maxes out, remember, this climb at 10%. Just coming over the top, loads of ride-ons coming in from everybody at home. Please keep them coming as we continue to look at the stats of Vidar Mel. 7 watts a kilo, 530 watts. That's the sort of power you've got to hold just to stay in this lead group of 58 riders. And there's another attack over the top. Good to have you back, Dave, because Teppo Lorio has launched one off the front for Wahoo Lakol, but it's only a slender lead.
What's amazing, Matt, is the depth of this field, that so many riders are able to keep themselves in out here as Teppo's going to come back into the group. And I am actually stunned to see this size group at this point in the race. I expected it to be half this size. So that just tells me that this last lap and a half is going to be absolutely ballistic out here. I realize it's all relative, but there's some very fresh legs in this group. The damage they're going to do will be immense.
Yep, coming into 1 kilometre to go until they will hear the virtual bell. There he is. He's a fan favourite, Teppo Lorio there, with that nice bushy beard. The man from Finland in that fetching kit for Wahoo Lakol. Looking controlled, still having to ride at about 5 watts a kilo just to stay in this front group. Most stats that we see in the men's, depending on the course, of course, is around 4.5 to 5 watts a kilo for these races. And quite often, it's the riders who get up there who actually do the less watts per kilo, just holding back a little bit, saving their energy as we enter downtown again. Let's give Teppo Lorio a few more ride-ons. Let's try and get him up to 40 ride-ons for this game. I wonder if he can hear us, but he's sat midway through that group, looking very, very good. But next time through will be the final lap, and they will only have 7.3 kilometers to go. This has been a far more tactical play than I originally would have thought. That is for sure, Dave. I certainly thought this race would have split up more, but we know the damage that potentially can be caused last time at that climb, as it only comes when it crests with 1,500 meters to go. But Dave, this is it. You can just see the finish line now. 1 lap to go.
You know who's absolutely got to be licking his lips right now would be Thomas Thrall, last week's winner. The man is a wattage cottage, and he's had a free ride up to this point. His teammates, Matt, on Next Esport have been contesting the bonus sprints, and at this point right now, I don't know that he's had a better opportunity, as again, teams are going to try to put them under pressure. That has been the modus operandi all day long for the World Elite Zwifters and Restart team, as Daniel Jemrosic is back on the attack. This time it looks like Ryan Larson is the rider trying to cover. But credit where credit is due, Matt. Restart has really tried to animate this race. World Elite Zwifters have brought their impact hammer out here, and it looks like it's going to be Spencer Segabuch from the Canyon team trying to regulate things right now. They don't want to let this get out of hand at any point, as both Canyon and Next have got to be happy with this situation. Maybe Next a little happier than Canyon right now, when you anticipate finishing positions for them.
Well, one more sprint to come. That's going to come in about 1,500 meters time at Jemrosic. As we've seen before, has opened up a little bit of a lead. Paul Odlin of World Elite Zwifters has just come across the gap, giving us 2 riders out in front for the very first time in this race. Every single time through the S's so far, that's 5 occasions we've seen one rider go solo, but a different feel to this final lap as Jemrosic teams up with Odlin, and they have 7 seconds. This could be interesting. This could be very, very interesting indeed. Remember, like in real life, they can swap turns on the front, rest in the slipstream of the other one, and then go flat out, giving them more of an opportunity, more of a chance, Dave, to stay out in front. And we've got this sprint coming up, the final sprint, in about 1,000 meters now.
Yeah, boy, and now you wonder, can Daniel Jemrosic get onto that wheel? He is really fighting here, as it looks like it's going to... What's important to remember is 10 for first, 8 for second here. So both of these guys are going to benefit if they can just work together. And I think they're going to be able to make it. We'll see, as Paul Odlin is having a breakthrough ride in the ZRL out here today. The New Zealander there on World Elite Zwifters has really upped his game. Daniel Jemrosic now is able to recover after that initial effort. And these guys look to be relaying each other quite nicely. This is a nice little move, although this, again, is for the points, I would say, at the sprint, as everything's going to reset one more time after that line, I would guess, Matt.
You would imagine so. Let's not rule it out, but I think the effort, the toll that it takes on a rider to stay away at this sort of level is very, very difficult indeed. Difficult to come back. We've seen how quick the bunch are chasing those points behind. Although there's 7 points for 3rd place across the line, they do come up very, very quickly. This is where the road starts to drop. Shortly they'll drift to the left, and then they'll go over the bridge for the final time. Then they'll take those points. Let's have a look at the camera angle there. Great shot of these riders relaying together back on to the wooden planks of this bridge. They still hold a lead, Dave, of 10 seconds, but who's going to take this one? Jemrosic goes through to the front, but to Odlin straight over the top. Or is he into the slipstream? It looks like he just passed him on the line. So it looks like Odlin has taken that one. We'll get confirmation of that in a moment, but Odlin takes maximum points there, and the bunch still around 8 seconds behind. Will the 2 in front take the chance and ride clear? Although it looks like Odlin and both Jemrosic have thought better of it, Dave. Look at their stats. They've knocked it off a little bit. Odlin takes maximum points. Jemrosic in second. Then Omdahl, Verm, Emmerich, Boulier, Ollie Jones there, and Van Diemen of the Netherlands riding for Movistar takes the final points. 4.1 Ks to go.
Well, Paul's not going to throw in the towel here, still sitting on about 3.5 watts per kilo, so he's going to keep grinding. Spencer Segabuch now looks like the rider that's trying to get up and join him for the Canyon team. As all right, well, I have to give this our most aggressive riders award to Paul Odlin out here today, doing a tremendous job. Now, will we see him again in the finale? Who knows? But I would say that his teammates have got to be buying him a beer at the end of the day. I guess they'd have to get down to New Zealand to do that, but that's going to be, again, all together now. Grupo Compacto here on the final lap. We're calling it just under 43K of racing out here today.
Indeed, this has gone very, very quickly indeed. A far more tactical race than I think both either me or you, Dave, predicted. Let's have a quick look at the action replay, the final replay of the night for that intermediate sprint. We know who took it. Let's have a quick look. Just Dave, call these across the line for us.
Yeah, so these two ended up not sure exactly. We're looking at the sprint there. I believe that was for third, because these are the two riders that took the maximum bonification. It was a late sprint there from Paul Odlin. You can see he's able to get up into the draft and then come around and pick up the 10 points there in our final bonus sprint. And we'll have a chance to look at how the teams are stacking up on the table, because there's one opportunity left to collect points here. 50 for the winner, 40 for second, 35 for third. So you can see how that points table really increases, and that was the sprint for third. Back in with the front group now.
Well, we're on the lower slopes of the final climb of the day. The final big climb. We're just approaching those slopes, should I say. They just crest this other little rise. And they go over 360 bridge for the last time. And we're looking at Thrall here. Thrall out of the saddle. That real low cadence technique that we've become very, very familiar with. But he's podiumed in both the races, of course, was awarded the win last week, so knows what it's like to taste success at this level. And the stats that you talked about earlier on, Dave, that sprint that he can sustain, 16 watts a kilo for 15 seconds, is going to serve him very, very well, you'd imagine, on today's finish. But for me, is he going to use it on the climb, or is he going to use it in the sprint itself? Difficult to call, because there's a lot of riders who are going to want to get rid of the sprinters as we hit this final KOM. There is the stats for the KOM. We've just, past the red light. They're on to the climb. Only 2.2 Ks to go. Nobody just yet taking things up, Dave.
Yeah, what a conservative race it has been up to this point. But I would have to agree, Thomas Thrall, the Canadian, even Tyson Fury says that guy hits hard when he hits, and we'll see if he's going to get a crack at it. His next team has done everything they needed to do right now. Canyon, I have a feeling, is going to be rushing the finish line here, trying to get out in front of it. You can see the purple and blue jerseys of the Canyon team pretty well positioned right now. This is going to come down to a battle of wills, and we are locked and loaded now, Matt. Here we go. The gradient goes up, and Swedish Zwifters finding the front again with Kjell Oftedal there. Outstanding job by the Swedes here today.
Well, John Verm has gone through to the front as well. One of Elite Zwift is just moving through to the front. Odlin is like a Duracell bunny, isn't he? He's got attacked. This is the third big attack by the New Zealander today. Over the top, 7 watts a kilo onto this new little section of road, which essentially sews this new course together. In just a few meters' time, he'll join the descent. 1.6 seconds now. 1,500 meters to go, but this is where the road mercifully starts to drop away. And as soon as he gets over 58 Ks an hour, he can have that little bit of a micro rest and then try and hold it all the way to the line. Dave, 1,200 meters. We've got one solo leader, 3 seconds the gap for Odlin.
This is it right here, right now. This is going to be a thrilling finale as they go inside of 1K. So the Flamme Rouge has passed. Paul Odlin is your leader. Here comes the Canadian Bruce Bird. Kjell Ferup there. They've got about 2.5 seconds to make up now, but they do have a big advantage back in that group. It is going to be a flat-out flying trip to the line here, Matt.
Odlin now solo. He's got half a second. He's about to be reabsorbed by the bunch here. They've taken him back. 550 meters to go. There is the Ferris wheel in the background spinning, casting light upon this amazing peloton as they're round the right-hand corner here. 400 meters to go now. It's starting to line out. Ollie Jones take things up. Jimmy Kershaw. Vujasan is there as well. Thrall at the front though. Thrall takes the lead. 150 meters to go. Vujasan coming round him. Pinto's there as well, but Thrall is still holding on. Looks like Gild is there as well. Over the top though, De Roos, who will take this one. An absolute blanket finish there. What superb stuff. I think it was Barnes in the end who came very, very late. Difficult to call that one across the line, but a blanket finish. But I think it is James Barnes of Next Esports, powered by Enshored, that takes the win yet again. Wow. Perfect timing there by the Australian.
That is huge. And actually, Next Esport, if they go 1-2, that ought to do it for them in the team battle out here today. Well, Thomas Thrall times that a little bit wrong, or did he, Matt? Because that might have been Thrall as a decoy there as his teammates end up coming through for first and second. I thought Mateus de Roos was going to collect the gold medal out here today, but he's going to end up third. Man, it's heavy hitters only in the top 10 today. We haven't seen a group sprint like that in the history of the ZRL. What a finale out here today, Matt.
It was very, very quick indeed. Great attack by Odlin over the top, but it was always going to be very, very difficult to him to maintain that lead. The effort required to ride at the same speed as the peloton was always going to be a challenge, but James Barnes, 2 from 2, and as you said, I mean, looking back, we'll get confirmation of the results very shortly, but unofficially, Dave, it looks as if Next Esports, powered by Enshored, have got 4 riders in the top 10, and there it is, the men in green and blue, dominating yet again. James Barnes confirmed as the winner. Second place, Brian Duffy Jr., his teammate there. Third place and rounding out the podium today, Mateus de Roos of BZR. First home for Movistar, Daniel Gould, and the first home for Canyon, the American Spencer Sigerbrook. Then we got Bart van den Eekhout of Cryo, Harvard Gednes of Callas, 2 more from Next there in the form of Nicky Hoog and Thomas Thrall, the winner last week, and then rounding out the top 10. The first home for Saris, Ryan Larson. So flicking over to page 2.
Well, thank you, Matt and Dave. I'm literally on the edge of my seat, so I probably need to just relax. We've got a few moments now until the women's race starts. Well, that was some race, wasn't it? Effervescent indeed. Very, very tough indeed tonight. Didn't split quite as much as in previous weeks. So I think it was a very tactical battle indeed, but looking like Next Esports, powered by Enshored, completely dominating the final standings as we saw 4 riders in the top 10 and a second victory in the ZRL Season 4 for James Barnes there. Hannah, that was a great win. I'm pretty sure I predicted James. I don't know whether I said it on camera, but I certainly said it between the two of us, didn't I?
You did. I can vouch for that. You definitely did say when we were speaking about those who would be ones to watch tonight. So congrats, 1-0.
Thank you very much. I will take that. Now, it did seem very much like, as we mentioned, it was a very tactical race. Certainly Dave and Matt were calling that in commentary. It's opened it up, hasn't it, for a lot of the teams that we haven't been speaking about that much so far in ZRL. Swedish Zwifters, BZR, Sports Solid, and Restart. They were all there in the mix, weren't they, in the intermediates? I think we've got the team results now, so we can just have a look at those. And that should tell us, I guess, how much those tactics have come into play. Oh, so there we go. There's the confirmation of the finish line points. James Barnes taking that victory ahead of his teammate Brian Duffy Jr. Thomas Thrall, who hit out early, just fading to 9th there, and only 1 Canyon Esports rider in the top 10. I don't know whether that's going to come back to haunt them. We should see very soon indeed. Here we go then, team points. Wow, another thumping victory for Next Esports, powered by Enshored there. And BZR Sports Solid, we've just mentioned them, taking 2nd place. That's a great ride for the Belgian setup. Canyon Esports in 3rd, their worst performance so far this series. I mean, not terrible when you think about it, but still their worst performance. And then Team Swedish Zwifters, again, those intermediate points that we've just mentioned, putting them up into 4th, just ahead of the Movistar E-team. So it was a tactical race, wasn't it? I mean, great to see those teams like Swedish Zwifters up there contesting lap after lap. Very,
very tactical. It had to be, didn't it, with the difficulty of the course, making sure that you have strength in numbers come the finish line. But also we saw through all of the intermediate sprints, it was either a sole rider who'd broken away and then they were able to just about take the maximum points, give or take 1 or 2 of those intermediates. But every lap we saw riders from various different teams trying to try the luck, try and take the maximum points at the intermediate sprints, and it was really hotly contested over the bridge, wasn't it, for those 10 points. Next Esports, powered by Enshored, as we mentioned at the top of the show, hadn't been going for any of the intermediate sprints over the last 2 weeks. Tonight, a very, very different story. They were up there picking up points and not just relying on the big points at the finish line.
Indeed, yeah. Now we can head over to look at the series points as well now. I'm guessing There we go. Next Esports on the top with a full house, 20-20-20. That's impressive. Canyon Esports dropping slightly further behind now, as you can see. Still in second, but 4 points adrift of Next Esports. That will take a little bit to catch back up. There's only 3 rounds remaining, remember. And then Movistar in third there. So yeah, still kind of tight at the top, but we are seeing a little bit of a gap now. So let's go over, shall we, to the women's race, because that is hot on the heels of the men's race this week. It's currently a 3-way tie at the top of their standings with Heino, Canyon and Aeonian all with 38 points. This is the men's series points, sorry. We've got back up there now. There we go. So we got 38, 38 and 37. My mistake. Aeonian just slightly behind. Aeonian placed first in week 1 and third last week, but their star rider is Lois Addergeest, who has taken back-to-back wins. I caught up with her earlier on today.
Did round 1 and round 2 feel different to race? What was the difference between them?
For me, round 2 was much harder because of the climb. I didn't have the fresh legs like the first race as well, because I did some longer outdoor rides. The course and the less freshness made it a much harder race. But I knew I would have a shot at the win when I could be in the first group on top of the climb. So I just hang on and then push the sprint.
It looked like you were contesting fewer intermediate sprints and QOMs than you had done in week 1. Was that because your legs were feeling bad from training, or was it because you knew that you had to ride it differently?
Yeah, both. I think it was a combination of both. I only did come at Aqueduct. On the second lap I took some points, but the other intermediate sprints I skipped.
In other bike races away from Zwift, how would you describe yourself?
I think my 20 seconds and 2 minutes power is my best weapon, and I can repeat it several times.
What are you expecting for the next 4 races?
The next race suits me in person and also the team very well, so I think we can go for the win there. The team time trial didn't used to be our strongest, so I hope we can do well there, but I don't think we will win the TTT.
And what about the overall, dare I say? Are you looking at that now as a possibility?
Yeah, of course, but it depends. I think it depends on the team time trial. Yeah, if we can get a 3rd, maybe 4th place there, we are in good position for the overall win, I think.
Well, ominous words from Addergeest there. Her strengths are her 1 to 2 minute power, and particularly that she can repeat it lap after lap, which is exactly what is needed, as we've just seen from the men's race. Now, if she does win again tonight, she will be the first rider in ZRL history to take 3 consecutive wins. And actually, she'll only be the 2nd rider to have 3 individual wins full stop. She has clearly been some signing for Aeonian, although obviously not on her own. We can see those results now for a little bit longer. So as we said, we've got 3 teams tightly packed at the top. Canyon and Heino joint on 38. Aeonian slightly behind with 37. Then 2024 slightly further adrift at 33. Movistar E team, who are actually skipping tonight, they are on 31 points, so are going to be significantly further adrift after the results from this evening. Clearly, though, we've got a pretty tight fight at the top, with our strongest teams there. Heino are the defending champs, of course. We'll come on to their lineup shortly. First of all, though, we're going to head over to have a look at the Aeonian lineup, the teammates of Addergeest. We've got Danielle Estrate, we've got Lois Addergeest, we've got Ariella Verharen, Sabrina Curtil and Monali Keller there. So all eyes are on that team today. But as mentioned, Team Heino are the defending champs and currently second on the leaderboard. That is a seriously strong team. Cecilia Hansen leading there, Melanie Mora, Alice Lethbridge, Vicky Whitelaw and Vicky Nealon as well. So it is going to be a seriously hotly contested race tonight. I should have asked Hannah before she left who her tip for the top would be. Personally, I can't see past Lois Addergeest, but there are a number of other hitters out there, of course. Team 2024, another team to watch out for. But without further ado, we will head over to Matt and Hannah in the commentary booth for the women's race coming up.
Thank you very much indeed, Simon. An interesting men's race we've had. I think we're going to be in for an absolute treat today for this women's race. The same distance, 7.3 kilometres, 6 laps of this 2 bridges loop, giving us a total distance of 42.85 kilometres. We saw a very, very tactical race before, but I still think this course could go either way. I think it provides so many opportunities for attacking, but as this is the first time it's been raced in the ZRL, that's what makes this such an exciting proposition. Clearly was the curse of the commentator before. Me and Dave called an attritional race. It was a big bunch sprint, but anyway, we'll soon find out what is going to happen today. There it is, the 2 bridges loop, up and down, twisting, turning. There is the total distance, 42.85 Ks, and a lot more elevation than last week in France, a total of 484, and they are the 3 classic power-ups today, the Aero, the Draft, and the Feather. More about them very shortly, because it's time to introduce my co-commentator for the women's race tonight in round 3 of the ZRL. It's underway. It's Hannah Walker, fresh from her stint on the couch. Hannah, you had a look at the men's race. Difficult to kind of predict what's going to happen on the women's race today, but one thing's for sure, I love this course.
I certainly do as well. It's providing some thrilling, exciting racing. Riders and teams aren't afraid to give it a go and go long, which is one of the key things that I took away from the race, that they're willing to take it up early on, to use the legs to make sure and ensure that they get points on the table, which for me it was exciting. It forced other teams behind to chase, because it did become, especially into those closing 2 laps, a few of those breakaways were a real danger, Matt.
They certainly were. A lot of the attacks happened on the early slopes, approaching the S's. Every single lap we did see a couple of riders, or at least 1 rider per lap attack. On the final lap it was 2. We saw the first half of the race very attritional on the climb, then it backed off and was hard last time up. So interesting to see what happens today. And the league, it's a intriguing set of circumstances. The top, Canyon drawing with Heino, not much to split between them with the team time trial coming up. So what do you think? How do you think, if you were the DS? Okay, I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball at you. I bet you didn't expect this question, Hannah. But if you were, as we head towards the S's first time up, nobody's attacked just yet. The bunch, as you can see, the shape of the bunch indicating to us that the tempo's not too high, although they are riding at around 4.5 watts per kilo, which is enough to make most people's eyes water. But based on what you've seen so far, and the fact, Hannah, this is the first time the women have raced on this circuit, how do you think you'd want to play this one, given the resources that you've got to hand?
Again, I think for teams and riders, make sure that you're getting consistent points and scoring early on and throughout. And even if you're not winning and taking maximum points, making sure that you can try and get as many riders up there in those 6 intermediate sprints as you possibly can, because as we've seen, there's such huge gaps come the finish line, and with those finish points, so important to make sure that you've already put yourselves up in the standings early on for this course. But as you said, Matt, I think provides this nature of the course with its twists and turns, its undulation, the roller coaster here as we head into the S's. It provides a really exciting, thrilling course, and it's a course that's for everyone, I think, isn't it? It's not just a climber's course. It's not just for the sprinters. For those who are more of a rouleur style rider, they're able to get off the front. There's numerous points on the course where you can attack and you can get a considerable gap.
Yes, indeed. It does remind me, and although we don't like always to compare in real life with in-game, as we see a lot of power-ups being used here. Riders getting rid of those power-ups ahead of the sprint to come. So on this little climb, why not use your power-up just to give you that little bit of extra recovery as Gamst goes clear. Lewis Gamst, the Dane, riding for Toyota Cryo RDT. They've slightly changed their sponsorship. Gans has gone clear, but it's not long before we're going to get up to the sprint. So riders getting rid of their power-ups because they know they're going to get a new one through the sprint, which is coming up very, very shortly indeed. But it's Stephanie Sidlick of Canyon Esports, the America, who's gone clear. Just going past her now is Jackie Godby. Godby straight over the top. We know how quick Godby can be, but immediately countered. Just coming across the line, but Adegris straight out of the blocks. We know how strong she is, but look at that. Maximum points for the rider from Aeonian. 2 wins from 2 and straight out of the blocks. Well, what do you think her opponents are going to say about that? Absolutely scintillating stuff from the rider from the Netherlands. She takes the win there from Embring. Hansen, the first home from Heino. Then we have Kumna, Svartstrom, Godby, Roberts and Mick. Well, what can you say so far about Lucy Adegis? She's Simon's favourite. I think she might be my favourite now, but holding nothing back at all, Hannah.
She's not leaving anything to chance. She's not holding back. She's not, of course, having won the last 2 rounds of the individual rounds and dominating the intermediate sprints. She's not letting that bother her. She's just racing exactly in the same style and the same manner as she does week in, week out.
Let's have a look at that again in slow motion. Slow virtual replay here. And there is the moment. Just look at the difference in pace, that acceleration that she's got, also combined with a perfectly dropped power up as well. She had the aero power up there as well, which helped give her that extra little bit of momentum. She knows when to time her sprints to perfection, and just coming home in second place there, just to the, at the bottom of the picture, was Anna Embring. So a good start by the rider from the Netherlands and a good start from Aeonian Racing, because despite the 2 wins, they're still in 3rd place overall. But very much like in the men's, Team Swedish Zwifters, Hannah, having a very, very good night. Aeonian so far in 2nd, then Heino, Beast Mode, Team Saris, ATP Racing, and then Kirkmare with 1 solitary point. So an interesting start, but I certainly didn't expect to see Adegist on the front so early. I'm wondering on the Discord channels if there's going to be a little bit of a chatter from some of the other teams to try and work out how they can overhaul or try and outsmart, because I don't think anybody at the moment, Hannah, can really outpower Adegist. When she hits it right, it's almost like they've got to think of a strategy to try and wrong foot her basically, rather than just go woman to woman and outpower her.
You're quite right, Matt. They can't outpower her at the moment. However, if you were a team, if you were a rider, you should have been highly anticipating a move from Adegist early on. That she's been so dominant in those intermediate sprints in the previous 2 weeks. And Godby, she did try to go early. Embring was just coming up very fast, but it was almost just a fraction too late, wasn't it? Come the finish line. But for Adegist, it was full commitment into that intermediate sprint, holding nothing back, a big power down into taking the maximum points.
Boy, Shallout leading this group at the moment. It's reduced already. That big surge through the opening sprint has actually seen several riders already detached. There's a group. Daniela Estrate is the last rider in this group. And we've got a big group off the back, though, at 15 seconds now. So 43 riders in this front group. We've lost, Hannah, 20 riders already on this course. And we're just looking at Team Swedish Zwifters now. And there is the full lineup. Jessica Evquist, Marlene Bjarhed, Anna Embring, Anna Spadstrom, and Maria Frisk in that rather fresh-looking kit. And they are an exceptionally good team, having a good night so far, because they've amassed the most points on the night so far. And that is what this is all about. If you're joining us for the very, very first time, this is the Zwift Racing League. Round 3, it is the ZRL. And the name of the game, although there's a lot of kudos in crossing the line first as an individual, is the collation of points out on the course and at the finish as well. As we look at Spadstrom, and a lot of featherweight power-ups being dropped on this climb. This is where it gets at its steepest, Hannah.
It does. It's a real leg stinger, isn't it, up here to a maximum gradient of 10%. But it just really starts to bite, doesn't it? When you go round that hairpin, it continues to climb, as we see a big move from one of the pre-race favourites, Kristen Kilchunski of Team 2024. She has a few bike lengths of a gap at the moment. The rider from the USA, she's starting to open up a lead of just over 1 second to Caroline Williams and Courtney Nelson of Team Saris. Alice Lethbridge up there as well for Heino Racing Team. But at the moment, Kristen Kulczynski, they see picture in picture in her pain cave.
Oh, she makes it look easy. She's turning a big gear there, straight into the super tuck there. Just a reminder, the riders can get into the super tuck on a downhill section, a descent of a minimum of 3% gradient, but they do have to be moving at 58 k's an hour, and she's certainly doing that at the moment. And you do have to stop pedaling as well. An opportunity to get a rest, and as soon as you hit the flat, that's when she's, look at that, straight back on the power again to make sure she keeps that momentum going, but she's only got a slender lead. It's only a short amount of time in front. There's a few of the riders that have actually been detached from the group as we look at the full lineup, Hannah, of 2024. So 2024, Kristen Kulczynski there. Our attacker, Shayna Paulus, finished on the podium last week. Charlotte Backus there as well. Paige Redmond, and the only British rider in their 5-rider lineup, Naomi De Pennington. And they do have several riders in this front group. But that first climb, Hannah, has seen this group reduced even more. And this is perhaps what I thought would happen. Because of the attritional nature of this circuit, there's not a lot of opportunity to rest, to get back in contact. I do think we will see this field thinned out, especially if riders like Kulczynski continue to go on the offensive and make it hard.
It's starting to diminish, isn't it? Around 10 riders have just got back to this front group, but that was a big effort for them to get themselves back on terms, to make that chase back on after that climb. We've got a few more riders who have been detached as well. Sabrina Kurtel, Laura Perry, Lizanne Norman from the Kirkmeyer E-Racing team have lost contact. Tara Fretter as well from that group, so it's noticeably starting to look a smaller peloton as we go into the second lap of this round 3. Caroline Williams leading things at the front of affairs for Canyon Esports at the moment, the rider from Great Britain, as we start to see some moving up going on, as we see one rider towards the back. Looks like she's just had a slight problem there. Try to see which rider that was.
Yeah, I think it was, yeah, definitely a rider. Sorry, Hannah, to cut across. I think it was one of the Canyon riders who had a little bit of a problem. But meanwhile, it's one of her teammates who's attacked off the front or tried to go clear. It's Caroline Williams of Canyon Esports drifting off the back. But Cécile Lejeune has had a little bit of a problem just off the back there. That sometimes does happen, unfortunately. If your Wi-Fi drops out, something like that. It's one of the small problems in esports. But Williams has now been overhauled, and straight over the top again is Kristen Kulczynski. We know how aggressive this rider is, but to attack only a couple of kilometres after her initial attack suggests to me she's got far better legs than she did last week. She said to me, I did speak to her briefly after the finish, she said, I just couldn't get my head around it. The legs just weren't there. I wanted to deliver, but I couldn't. But clearly, she's in fine form today, Hannah.
To be able to recover from that big effort that she did, have just over a kilometre in the peloton, recover and then go again through these S's here. As the kilometres tick down, she drops the featherweight power up as she goes solo, starts to open up just less than 2 seconds of a lead over the peloton. But as you say, she must be in such supreme form that she's confident in her own abilities, that she's able to go long, she's able to hold off a chasing peloton to try and take the maximum points in this next intermediate sprint, and she is doing that. She's holding steady at just less than 2 seconds. Julia Shallow, the rider there from Beast Mode powered by Rose, as the road just starts to ramp up and rise there.
Yeah, that was another little, very short section there, Hannah, just illustrating how tough the S's are. Not just the lefts and the rights, which can throw you a little bit, but the actual gradients they're kicking up at. The little descents, there was a small little rise, only 20, 30 metres, but it was 10%. As you can see, top right of your screen, there's the indication of the elevation again. The gradient, 5, 6, 7%, but it does look as if she's going to be caught. But already, because of the nature of her riding, the character that she shows, she's already got 38 ride-ons, as we see a lot more power-ups being dropped just over the top of that rise as we head ever nearer to sprint number 2. Only one sprint per lap on this short circuit, only 7.3 kilometres round. It comes 2.5 Ks in, and Hannah, we're already there again, but look at this. We're just seeing Adegeest midway through the bunch, just sitting in the slipstream of the other riders. Lots of power-ups being dropped here. The aero is the one that you want. The draft, of course, gives you 50% more draft from the rider you sat behind. But Verharen, the teammate who was second the other day, Svartstrom, Adegeest also in the mix. This is a lot closer this time. Difficult to call who got that one, but I think it was Verharen. Well, or Bjarhed will get the very, very close. It was Bjarhed. Team Swedish Swift is having an absolutely superb evening. Clearly, they've got a dictate that's come out to say we're going to try and go for these early points. Gontoya is there in second. Mora is in third. Vardstrom making it 2 riders inside the top 10 for Team Swedish Swift is there. Adegeest, Verharen, 5th and 6th. And then we have Siglik and Cecilia Hansen rounding out the top 8 there. So a great evening so far for Team Swedish Swifters. They are really here on a mission.
They're taking this on early, aren't they, Matt? And wanted to try and get the points on the leaderboard. They're obviously feeling very, very good as you just see Team Swedish Swifters there in the centre of the peloton. As let's take a look at a replay of that sprint. Just take a look at how it unfolded. It was the rider from Aeonian who took it up early. She had that aero power up, but and she had a teammate as well, Verharen, there on her wheel. But just take a look how late Team Swedish Swifters come up here. It really was shoulder to shoulder, neck and neck. Heino trying to get themselves involved as well, and it came down to the smallest of margins here. Just take a look at that. Not even half a wheel, Matt.
I'll tell you what it came down to. I think it was the best haircut as well of all of those, as well as the power that has been delivered. We've seen some good haircuts in game. Of course, riders can head into their virtual garage, select the kit that they want, the glasses, the helmets, the hairdos. But that is the net result of that superbly timed sprint by Team Swedish Swifters. 10 points clear of Aeonian, 27-17. Heino solid though in third with 13. Then we have Enshored, Beast Mode, Saris, ATP, Canyon with just 2 points so far today, and Kirkmare currently in 9th with 1 solitary points and 4 laps to go. So great riding by Swedish Swifters, but it is all back together and a reduced group of riders. It's getting less and less every lap, and there is a small group of, well, we've got 2 groups just off the bat. We've got only 27 riders, Hannah, in this front group. Then we have Roberts, Edquist, Pennington and Radford chasing behind at 15. So there's still a slim possibility they could get on. Then another group of 4 at 40 seconds, and then the rest at well over a minute. So a far more attritional race here, probably due to the fact we've had several riders really willing, Hannah, to take things up at the front. And the riders that do it know the effect that can have on the bunch behind. They want to thin this out as much as possible.
They know that everyone's going to be starting to go deep into the red. Those riders who don't necessarily recover from such intensity, with these short explosive bursts of accelerations, the attacks as well that come. And so those riders who are on a strong night, you've got to use it to your advantage, don't you? When you're feeling good, you have to yeah, as I say, take advantage over your rivals. That if you're feeling good, don't leave it until the last minute. Let's try and take a real lead in the race early on and make hay. So we see Jackie Godby, a rider who was excellent in the previous seasons of the ZRL, the rider from Team Saris. She's a previous individual victor in the ZRL. You just see her there in her pain cave. A very proud rider from the USA with that flag. She just keeps that cadence very, very high. Just over 85 revs per minute.
Well, we've got an attack. Beast Mode have just attacked off the front. A couple of riders really starting to suffer on this climb. That was a great shot there, but this is Schallau, the German. This team burst onto the scene. Remember, last season they were newly promoted from the community, and they've really set things apace. They're really unafraid to race, and they know how to race on this platform. And that little move by Schallau has drawn the sting from Christian Kuczynski and Courtney Nelson. So Beast Mode 2024 and Saris are now in front, but they got a lead of only just over a second and a half as we just head into this midsection. or the little plateau, should I say. Kolczynski taking it up at the front. This is where she was last time through, but remember, she was solo, and there's one rider trying to get across the gap in the form of Williams from Canyon Esports. So some interesting riders, and every time up this ascent, we've seen some great attacking, and the first opportunity today to see this draft, the great graphical illustration of where to sit in the draft. I wish we'd see a little bit more of that, because that is absolutely fascinating and really important in relation to your understanding of how to ride this, and how to ride esports effectively, Hannah.
It certainly is. When you just saw it, saw there, as you said, it would be great to see it more often, just to show you how important it is in terms of the positioning. Caroline Williams just noticing that a real strong trio of riders were just about to go and clip off the front. She sensed that danger. She knew that Canyon Esports didn't have a rider in that trio of riders. So she bridged across, but all back together now as Julia Shallout still remains on the front
Well, a good little move there
of this group as they...
Sorry, Hannah. Yeah, Shalal still there on the front. She's on the phone as well, just so she's clearly very, very composed, despite that attack over the top of the climb. I wouldn't imagine she's on iTunes or Spotify. I'd imagine she's contacting her teammates, all of these squads in communication with each other via themselves or via a manager as well. Generally, they'll all use Discord. They'll be talking to each other about the tactics. And actually any changes are planned as well, because the interesting thing about this course, opposed to other courses, although you can train on this course as much as you can and get used to the nuances of the course, what you can't predict is what the other riders are going to do. So the best laid plans often, Hannah, will change. So constant communication, as ever, even more important on a course that you haven't raced before.
You have to play to your strengths, but you also have to follow the way the race is going. If a group of riders goes up the road, but it wasn't your plan to get into a breakaway, well, you need to change tack, don't you, and make sure that you stop a group of riders getting away, or at least put some of your riders into that move. So, as you say, the communication aspect between the riders, between the teams, is so important to make sure that you are able to adapt your plan, your strategy on the move. Of course, you want to try and keep to your plan A, as it were, as much as you possibly can. But you've also got to be willing and able to adapt as the kilometres tick down. Perhaps a team will be thinking now, well, we haven't got that many points on the scoreboard so far. What, and how are we going to be able to claw back some of those points? Importantly, how are the riders feeling at the moment? We've seen a really reduced, whittled group. When you take a look at how many riders are left in this group so far, only 26 riders remain, so almost half of the peloton has gone out of the back as the fast and ferocious pace has started to take its toll.
Yeah, exactly. It's the composition of the group. You're quite right, Hannah. It's how the riders are feeling, the composition of the group, the riders that you've got left, the other riders that you want to be mindful of as well in this group. This is where communication is key. This is where quite often the manager will really come into their own, where they're looking at the stats, understanding the permutations of the group, looking at the various strengths and weaknesses, but all importantly, Hannah, making sure that everybody is telling each other how you feel. Although this racing is on the short side, it's real intense. The best way to compare racing on Zwift and esports is to a criterium race in real life or a cyclocross race. It's that similar kind of threshold effort, or even a short time trial, although it will ebb and flow, far less linear than that. But if you have just joined us for the first time, this is the Zwift Racing League. This is round 3. We're on the island of Watopia, and for the first time we're on the Two Bridges loop, and you are watching the women's race. 7.3 kilometers round, 6 laps, and the name of the game is to score as many points as you can for your team via the intermediate sprints out on the course and via mopping up as many points as you can on the finish line. As we look at Natalie Stevenson here from Cryo, Stevenson from Scotland there, just at the front of this group, a rider that I know will like this hard course. She'll like the fact that it's been reduced down. She'll like the fact that you know who's around you. And quite often, Hannah, when you've got a big bunch coming to the finish, you don't know who exactly is around you. But in a small group like this, although they can't necessarily see each other IRL, they'll know the strengths and weaknesses of the riders around them, and therefore can formulate their own sort of plan and how to execute it.
and how many riders from each team are in this front group. It gives you a much clearer and quicker way to take a look as an overview of how many riders there are from Canyon Esports, for instance, or Aeonian, just to calculate where you need to be, how many points you might need to collect along the way as we go into this next intermediate sprint. Aeonian wanting to take things up very, very early. You see there the rider, Daniela Estrade, she has that draft power up. Now, as we come into the line, we have Hansen up there. Williams just coming around. Hansen from Heino taking the maximum points. Aeonian up there, 2024 as well with Paulus.
Well, you're right there. That was a good sprint there, Hannah, from Williams. Takes maximum points there for Canyon. 3 there in the top 8 for Heino, who are coming to the fore now. They'll like the attritional nature of today's course. Hansen, Whitelaw, Baharan and Daniela Estrate there. Shayna Paulus, the first time we've seen her scoring points tonight there for 2024. Adigist making 3 in at the top 10 there. So an interesting mix of riders, and none from Team Swedish Zwifters, who are the team so far that has dominated the points rankings, as a couple of riders just at the back there get back in contact, and that's important. We don't want to lose contact here as we go through the Italian village. Let's have a look at the replay of that sprint, because that was another very, very close one indeed. One, of course, by Williams, but let's have a look, Hannah, at how this one unfolded.
Yeah, the Aeonian, the 2 riders from Aeonian, they took it up very, very early, and it left Caroline Williams just to use that draft to come round, and she took it by a clear bike length there. It was very, very close for the 2nd, 3rd and 4th positions on the road there with Hansen of Heino just taking some points. And there we see, after that intermediate sprint, Heino Racing Team, they've drawn level with Ionian Race Team, having placed 3 riders in the top placings. Team Swedish Zwifters with 27, only 1 point adrift, but having not scored in that intermediate sprint, you can see how quickly teams are able to close the gap.
Yeah, definitely. That was just 1 round without scoring, and that's why the way these points are weighted is important as well. That's why it's important for the teams to go for them. I think the way that the courses that have been picked, of course, but the way the points are distributed is absolutely crucial, because teams, if they want to win on the night as best they can or score highly, they have to get involved. Let's have a look at Heino. They've got a few riders in this front group, at least 3 that I can see, maybe 4 actually. We'll confirm that soon. Cecilia Hansen of Sweden, Melanie Mora of Switzerland, should I say? Get my flags right, Matt. Alice Lethbridge of United Kingdom, Vicky Whitelaw of Australia there, and Vicky Nealon, again, of Great Britain. They're a dominant team. They're a team that knows how to win, and they would prefer a tough race, and they are the stats for all the riders. The riders have to have their heart rate monitors on, and they also have to have dual power recorded, and they are the stats. Most of them hovering around between 2.5 to 3.5 watts a kilo as they approach very, very shortly the climb again. These laps, Hannah, aren't they ticking by very, very quickly indeed today?
Very quickly, and the undulations in this course, the fast nature of certain sections added in with the this climb, although it's not classified, it really is doing some damage to some riders, isn't it? But this course, I'm quite liking this course. As you said before, Matt, the first time that we've seen it in the ZRL, and the way it's able to be raced, it gives riders who might have been tailed off in the intermediate sprint or one of the climbs an opportunity to get back involved, which is great to see. We still see a real select group of riders at the moment. We take a look at how many are in this group currently. 26 riders still, the nearest group behind this at 1 minute and 34. As we see a flurry of power-ups just being dropped on this 10% gradient.
Well, it's Courtney Nelson and Shallow were attacking there. So Shallow, she went last time up, and it was a devastating attack last time. But Shallow, there's the draft again. The draft is at its longest on the descent, at its shortest on the climb, as you'd expect, mirroring what happens IRL. But she's been overtaken here by Kristin Kulczynski. Kulczynski coming round. There's the draft. So if you're not in that, within a few meters of the draft, depending on the speed, you will not get the benefit of any draft at all. But right in the slipstream of Kulczynski, as you can see there, in that optimum spot, to save that little bit of all-important energy is Julia Schellau. They have moved their clear now. 1.5 seconds it is for the American and the German. Fourth time, should I say, that Kulczynski has attacked. She just keeps on going and going. And look at her here, great shot. Just over 6 watts a kilo for the American, 67 ride-ons. Please do get involved in the comments underneath on YouTube as well. But please do fire up your Zwift Companion app and give these riders these ride-ons, because they do make a lot of difference. But Hannah, 2 riders have gone clear, but the lead still only a slender one.
Very slender, just over 1 second is the gap. But for me, Kristen Kulczynski, she's been very, very aggressive. She's wanted to take the race on. However, when she's making these moves, it's not translating into points for Team 2024. So a lot of energy has been spent from the rider from the USA. Likewise with Julia Schellau from Beast Mode Powered by Rose in that black jersey with the orange cap. So for me, it's tremendous. Kristen Kulczynski, of course, and obviously she wants to try and whittle this group down when the riders are really into that red zone. She's wanted to try and make it a much reduced group going into that finish. She's got a good sprint on her, but there are better sprinters within this group, so she wants to try and take as few riders as possible to the finish. As we come through 200 meters until we'll cross the line, riders will get another opportunity and a chance to get another power up as we go through this arch as well. So we have been seeing so many riders using those power ups either in those in the intermediate sprint, in that run-in, or on the climb.
Indeed, we're at half distance now, Hannah. So 3 laps of this 7.3 kilometre circuit to go, and we've lost a few more riders. Just look towards the top of your screen, and there's a little clutch of riders trying desperately to get back in contact. At the moment, that front group only contains 19 riders. Last place in that group, as she always tends to ride. She's so tactically astute, is the Romanian Daniela Istrati of the Aeonian race team. But that group behind, containing Stevenson, Gamps, Bexiju, Marb, Eleanor Wiseman, and Luis Gamps, they are trying to get back in contact, and it's holding. But as we've said before, it's now or never. They have to shut that gap down very, very quickly indeed, because I think it's going to be too tough for them to get back in contact, should I say, on the S's.
Natalie Stevenson doing the bulk of the work. She's putting in a huge effort, the rider from Toyota Cryo RDT, to try and close this gap. It was at around 5, just less than 6 seconds, and look at that. What an effort from the rider from Scotland, Natalie Stevenson of the Toyota Cryo RDT team. She's closed the gap. She's gone straight through the group and straight to the front. Wow, what an incredible effort there from Natalie Stevenson.
It's not often we get to see efforts like that, and I love the way that the camera pan back, gave us that aerial shot, because it's you can tell that was now or never. She had to make a big attack, almost like a race-winning move to get across the gap. Otherwise, this group, I can tell you, would have flown unless they ease significantly. But I think there's still some relatively fresh legs in this group, happy to try and make this race as hard as possible. But what a brave, albeit strong performance there from Natalie Stevenson. But quite often, if you get gapped over the top of the climb, and you leave just a little bit of a gap on the descent with the speed they're carrying, if you lose the draft, Hannah, from that bunch, even though it's long on the descents, you're out the game, and you've got to make a very, very substantial effort to get back in contact, because the other riders she was with are now gone.
It was full commitment, wasn't it, from Natalie Stevenson? And I think that is a key thing. She knew that it was a now or never move, that if she wanted to get herself back into contention in this leading group, she had to spend a lot of energy and, as you say, make more or less an attack to get herself back in the game. And we see some other riders who have just got back in. We look through, Gontova is there, Eggfist is there, Maria Frisk got herself back into contention too. So a few riders will have spent a lot there to make sure that they could get into the front group as they rise through the S's up to 11% there for these riders. They've got to make sure that they recover now. If we see any more attacks, any moves as the road starts to rise, they could find themselves in real difficulty. So it's so important now to make sure that you can recover from that effort to get back into the group.
Yeah, definitely. That was a good spot there. Another couple of riders did get in, including Bexiju from Canyon Esports. So we've got another attack off the front, and guess who it is again? It's the effervescent, the ever-present Kristen Kulczynski of 2024, sticking out 8 watts a kilo. She's got that extra draft power up She's a couple of seconds clear, well, a second and a half. Gamst is trying to come across the gap, the Dane from Toyota Cryo RDT. But Kulczynski is persevering with this. She's still holding this lead. In fact, she's opening up a little bit more of a gap. Gamps now at 3 seconds. Jackie Godby of Saris there in third. Paulus there, her teammate of Christian Kulczynski, not too far away. It looks like she is going to take at least maximum points. So that all this effort has finally come to something, although is she going to be caught on the line because the bunch are moving very, very quickly indeed. No, Kulczynski takes maximum points. Istrate just looks like she might have got second, or was it Cecilia Hansen? That was very, very close indeed. Kulczynski, maximum points for 2024. Istrate there in second for Aeonian. Celia Hansen, the first home from Heino. Then Spadstrom, two from Williams in the form of Sidlick, sorry, two from Canyon in the form of Williams and Siglick, and then we had Monali Keller and Vicky Whitelaw rounding out the top 8. But a brave ride from Kulczynski, just held on, and she timed that one to perfection. Talk us through this one. A bold move by Kulczynski, who looks as if she's just going again.
A very audacious, bold move from Kristen Kulczynski from Team 2024. We'd mentioned half a lap before that she was doing and using a lot of energy, but not taking any points in the meantime. But here she opened up a considerable lead. 5 seconds was the gap, and then it was a real rush from behind, wasn't it, from the Daniela Estrati, the Romanian rider from Aeonian, starting to get challenged by Hansen of Heino, and again another really close finish for those points at the back. But 10 points there for Team 2024, really vital. They moved themselves up into 5th place overall at 13 points, and you see Aeonian 38 points. They start to edge clear of Heino Racing Team. Team Swedish Swifters add a few more points there. They remain in 3rd. Canyon Esports in 4th. Enshored, Howard.
Yep, sorry, Hannah. Yeah, they have certainly put themselves in a good place tonight. Aeonian race team there with 38 points, a dominant performance. But importantly, in this front group, they have 4 riders. They've got Istrate, Adigis, Baharan, and Monali Keller in this front group. Kulczynski and Paulus are the 2 riders from 2024. 4 riders also from Canyon Esports in the form of Caroline Williams, Bexy Jew, Stephanie Sidlick, or 3 riders, should I say, also there in numbers as well. One of the best nights they've had so far this season. 4 riders in the red there with that big white H on their back. That's Heino Racing Team with Hansen, Mora, Lethbridge and Whitelaw. Team Swedish Swifters also looking very, very good tonight with Edquist, Bjarhead, Spadstrom and Frisk. So this is delicately balanced. A lot more points on offer on the finish line. 50 points, remember, for the winner, but quite evenly balanced, and the best night in a long time for Team Swedish Swifters. I guess the question for them, can they convert that into points on the finish line as well?
We saw such a strong start from them in the first 2 intermediate sprints, and since then Spadstrom, she's scored sort of midway in the pack at that last intermediate sprint, and I'm wondering if perhaps they just went a little bit too early. A lot of energy was exerted earlier on, and what have they got left? Or are they just taking a couple of laps to rest and recover from the efforts that they did earlier on in the race, that they can come back strong in the back end of tonight, making sure that they can pick up maximum points, or at least pick up a bulk of the high scoring points come the finish line. But for me, the way they've rode and really taken it on and committed to it for Team Swedish Swifters has been fantastic, not only in the women's race, but in the men's race as well.
Yeah, they've clearly had a bit of a gathering. Quite often, many of these teams that has both the men's and women's teams, they'll have the same team manager, won't they? They'll have a similar kind of strategy or a similar set of objectives. As we look towards the front, only 19 riders now in this front group. As Shallow again does what she's done every single time up this climb. This is lap 4 of 6, as you can see. Still 16 Ks to go, but Shallow clearly very, very strong and comfortable, confident to try and go clear on this climb. She hasn't used a power up. Nelson moving up quickly. I wonder if we're going to see any other riders shredded, but that's a shed on this group, should I say. Lots of power-ups being used on this climb. The one you want on these steep slopes, of course, is the featherweight power-up, which reduces your weight and increases at the same time your power-to-weight ratio, but decreases your weight by 10%. As we look at a couple of other power-ups being used just on the top. Consummate use. Whatever power-up you get, It's about using it as best you can, even if it's to save energy, even if it's not to go clear, because we know we've got more power-ups on offer, Hannah, through the finishing line. So just to see a couple of those experienced riders just using the aero power-up on that flat section, just saving them, giving them that extra bit of rest, it just shows how shrewd and how wise and how really, really important that these riders understand the use of the power-ups are.
It's been such a fast, hard race so far. Anywhere that you can save energy, whether that be with a super tuck, whether that be with a power up, as we start to see some the super tucks, the aero tucks being used, Adagis towards the front as the majority of this, the riders as they go under that flamme rouge, making their way into the finish, save as much energy as possible. So for the rider in game using the power up, but also it gives them that opportunity to take on some fluids, rehydrate yourself after such a hot and hard race. It's so important to make sure that you keep the body at optimum, making sure you're keeping yourself cool as well, because you get so hot, as we know, with e-racing. Making sure that you're keeping your core body temperature as cool as possible. Here is Los Adagis, the rider who has taken 2 individual victories so far in the ZRL.
Can she make history? That is the big question, isn't it? She's an experienced rider on the road. If you look back on her results this season, they've been very, very impressive indeed. But as she said, her strongest asset is her 20-second power and her minute power as well. And when you speak to riders on Zwift across both the men's and the women's discipline, Hannah, when you ask riders what would be the biggest tip for a community rider to improve their ability to race on Zwift, of course, the more racing you do, the more you get used to the use of power-ups as we cross the line once more and we have 2 laps to go. But the most common tip that I hear from riders at this elite level, which clearly translates to doing well at this particular unusual discipline, is that minute power. That's the holy grail, is to get that minute power, the ability to sprint, because these sprints wind up from a long way out. You have to be able to produce power, not just for 10 or 15 seconds, but for longer than that. And if you wish to try and get away or even stay within the realms of an elite group like this at the back end of a tough race, you've got to be able to put power out for a long time. And that's the theme that I see across both disciplines.
When we look at the climb on today's course as well, it's roughly around a minute of effort, maybe 50 seconds to a minute of effort going over that climb. So to be able to sustain the power and have that effort in you to be able to remain with those riders who have such a good 1 minute power output, it really shows. And it's not often that we see a climb that's around 45 minutes to an hour where you really need to have such good power for that duration.
Interesting to look at the Aeonian race team. All their power data: Estrati, Adagis, Baharan, Kurtil and Keller, a really international flavoured team. Canada, America, France, the Netherlands and Romania. Another indication of how international this sport is, as we've got another rider floating off the front. That was a kind of a stealth dig there by Caroline Williams. She's got a 2-second lead now, the rider from Canyon Esports. This is proving to be, Hannah, on this particular part of the course, a real moment that riders like to go. It's that long, long drag. It is a bit of a climb, but not too steep, but clearly provides that fertile ground, that catalyst for riders to attack. And we've seen it every single lap in both the men's and the women's race. Williams now clear.
We'd say it's a really uncomfortable part of the course because it's not an out-and-out climb. It's just a really hard drag. It's a really hard grind that you need to try and get yourself into some sort of rhythm with high power, as Caroline Williams just makes another acceleration out of the saddle to try and inject more pace into her attack as she starts to ever so slightly increase her lead to Julia Shallow, who is chasing this one, the rider from Beast Mode, powered by Rose. Sidlick is up there as well, her teammate, just patrolling things at the front of the peloton. But Williams, it looks like she will be. This will be closed in. Bjarhed, the rider from Team Swedish Swifters, starting to move up towards the front, putting her nose in the wind as she wants to try and bring back Caroline Williams. She knows how dangerous this rider is, the British rider, who is just closed back in now.
Yep, Caroline Williams is brought back by this group And it is a small group. There are only 19 riders left in this front group as Kulczynski moves to the front. Again, the only rider, a Shallow from Beast Mode, powered by Rose, in that black kit with the orange lion just on the back. Kulczynski has gone with it. These two have gone clear before. Kulczynski deploys a power up just at the right time at the top of that climb. Goes straight to the front. Such a strong rider, loves these tough courses, and she'll be buoyed by the fact there's only 19 athletes left in this front group. She loves to suffer. She also loves, like we all do in cycling, it is a bizarre sport to see other riders suffer as well. Then, of course, we're all mates afterwards, but that is the beauty of this sport. And Kulczynski, one of the best protagonists today, without a shadow of a doubt. She's feeling good, but a rider that knows how dangerous she is now trying to get across the gap. Molly Keller is trying to shut the gap now for the Aeonian race team, and is closing quick, but Kulczynski looks as if she's going to hold on. No, she isn't. Just coming by her is Shallow on the line, and also Keller too. So Kulczynski secures third there, but she was just overhauled, but scores a nice handful of points for Team 2020. As Godby now goes over the top. Shallow takes that for Beast Mode. Keller second for Aeonian. Kulczynski in third there for 2024. Sartron for Team Swedish Swifters in fourth. Then Paulus, Sidlick, Williams and Jackie Godby taking a singular point for the only rider from Saris in this lead group of only 19 riders. And we're heading in to around a lap and a half to go of this race. Hannah, talk us through the replay.
Yeah, it opened up with Kristen Kulczynski making that acceleration, and it was with around 50 meters to go that Monilee Keller started to come round, but then Shallow just nipped it on the line for Beast Mode powered by Rose, and it just showed that late acceleration going into the finish line stopped Kristen Kulczynski from taking the maximum points. And for Kulczynski, if she just accelerated just going into the finish line again, she could have just injected more pace to hold them off. In the end, settled for third place in that intermediate sprint, but again, 6 points to add to her total tally. That's puts Team 2024, they remain in fifth place with 23 points, but Aeonian race team, they have a 9-point lead at the moment over Team Swedish Swifters with 37, who overtake Heino race team. So that strong position there in that intermediate sprint puts them into second place. Canyon Esports in fourth. As I say, fifth for 2024. Beast Mode powered by Rose, courtesy of the 10 points from Shallow, move up into sixth. Enshored with the 8 points. Saris with 4. ATP Racing Venom with the 2. And Kirkmeyer rounding out the top 10 with just the solitary point.
Yeah, that is a very, very nice points haul by the Aeonian race team. 2 wins from 2, but not leading overall. But what they do have, it's important as we're heading into the last 10 Ks or so of this race as Jackie Godby moves to the front, the only rider in the front from Saris. Let's have a look at the composition of this 19-rider group out in front. We have four riders from Heino. Can they get their first win of this year, having been dominant, of course, for the last couple of seasons? Hansen, Mara, Lethbridge and Whitelaw are there. 4 riders from Team Swedish Swifters as well, or 3 riders, should I say, from Team Swedish Swifters are there. 2 from Canyon in the form of Williams and Sidlick. 2 from 2024, Kulczynski and Paulus. 4 riders from the Aeonian, Istrati, Adegis, Baharan and Keller. 1 rider from Saris in the form of Godby, and then Shallow from Beast Mode. That is the composition of this group in front as we see Jackie Godby. 90 ride-ons there for Jackie Godby. She's a very, very popular rider.
Wow.
And a rider who knows how to win as well in the ZRL. When she gets it right, Hannah, she is very, very difficult to beat. She knows how to time her sprint, but she likes an uphill finish, doesn't she?
She does, but she's also very patient. She doesn't go early. She doesn't waste energy where it's not necessary. She saves everything. She floats. She surfs the wheels the best she can. She makes sure she follows the riders and then picks the precise moment to unleash her power. And she has timed it to perfection on so many occasions. But like you say, she does like an uphill finish. I think back to Richmond, when she won atop of the cobbles, where she came almost out of nowhere. She was not even in the shot with around 100 meters to go, and her pure acceleration into that finish line was quite phenomenal, actually. So for Jackie Godby, although she's the lone rider for Team Saris in this front group, she can certainly do damage and be the individual victor tonight, as we see another move from Julia Shallow of Beast Mode powered by Rose. This German rider has been on fire all night.
She has been on fire. She looks like she's on fire, but I can assure you, put away your fire extinguishers. Shallow is not on fire at the moment. That is just the draft that she's putting out over this climb. If she keeps away over the top, that draft will get a little bit longer. And if a rider doesn't get into it, they will have no benefit at all. So Shallow showing her power. This is about the third attack from the German, and she's looking very, very strong indeed, powering away over this new road with the clutch of riders just behind her, leading them by a second and a half. Godby, Lethbridge, Keller. This is a really, really strong group out in front. They hit the descent, but it looks as if a brief tenure out in front is now over for Shallow, but she's definitely wants to make these riders hurt. There's no doubt about it. She wants to reduce this group. She's the only rider in this group as well, Hannah, so she's keen to try and do what she can to maybe put the other riders on the back foot and force them to chase, but she's just got to be careful she doesn't get dropped in the process, because she's just lost the wheel there.
Yeah, she's gone from that super tuck where she obviously didn't accelerate quick enough and get on top of the power quick enough with such the fast pace of the riders who've just overtaken her. She has made it back into that group. She's sitting nicely on the outside, on the right of the peloton, moves herself into the centre of the pack. But as we make our way into the finish for the penultimate time, they will hear the imaginary bell with 1 lap to go as we make our way into this finish, Matt.
Yep, it's going to be 1 lap to go, 7.4 laps to go, 7.3 kilometres to go when they cross the line. Remember, the line comes very, very late in terms of visuals for this group. If we can just pan the camera back a little bit, there's 300 metres to go. Although they know where the line is, it doesn't actually come into sight until around there. Great shot there, 200 metres to go. And look, top left of your screen, just underneath the bridge, for the very first time we can just see the gantry. That comes into sight at 150 metres to go. So timing your sprint is crucial. And we all know how long some of these riders like to go, but there's nothing like having that visual representation of the finish line to really time at your sprint to perfection. But now we do have 7.1 Ks to go. You can see the volcano spilling out its lava in the distance. Some wonderful views here in Watopia today, but no time for sightseeing. This is the final lap. Only 18 riders now in this front group, Hannah. 4 from Heino are there, 4 from Team Swedish Zwifters, 2 from Canyon, 2 from 2024, 4 from Aeonian, and 1 from Beast Mode.
An incredible makeup of riders in this leading group of 18 into that final lap. A very, very different scenario of what we might have expected. Perhaps would have expected a larger group going into this finish, as we see Caroline Williams from Canyon Esports. She leads up this this slight drag as Jackie Godby just tries to slot into her wheel up towards the front. The Julia Shallow of Beast Mode powered by Rose. She's recovered from that little chase, momentarily chasing back on that descent, making her way up this little drag. A little bit more acceleration from these riders.
It's another little attack here. We've seen every single time up this little drag, we've seen a rider go. Both men's and women's races, and it's happened again, and this will be for the final time. And it's Caroline Williams, one of 2 riders in the front for Canyon Esports, going clear now, but she only holds a slender lead. She's going away here now. This is where the road just flattens out, but I don't think she'll be given too much of a distance or too much of leeway out in front, because she is a very, very dangerous rider indeed. But 1.2 seconds it is. Just under 4 watts a kilo. And here is the stats, or here are the stats, should I say, of Caroline Williams. Lots of ride-ons there, 94. I think she deserves a few more than that. 3.8 watts a kilo, 82 RPM, 34 Ks an hour. This is a hilly section, and 164 beats a minute. But that bunch, or what's left of the bunch, you can hardly even call it a bunch, Hannah. This is more of just a select group of riders now, almost like a break. The riders, the next group on the road, interestingly, around a minute and a half behind, but there are still lots of points on offer. So from 19th place down to 30th are points. So although we won't see them battle it out, there are still some very, very valuable points out on offer for group number 2. Although Williams is still moving clear, although saying that, she's about to be brought back to heel.
This is where the communication aspect comes in, Matt, between riders and sports directors, that they know and they've had it verbally said to them that make sure you sprint for every possible position in the groups from behind. You might be out of an individual standings or the big points come the finish line, but that could make the difference come the finish when we tot up all the team's points in terms of the overall standings. So important not only to be focusing on the points, the intermediate sprints to try and take maximum points or take the big points come the finish line, but making sure that the team are aware of still 11 places are available and up for grabs to score tonight. As we start to see the pace start to ramp up, 45 kilometers per hour as we make our way up this 6%, 7% drag.
Yeah, 45 k's an hour, as you said, Hannah, upper drag as well, carrying that momentum. This is the difficult thing about these S's for me, is the ability to carry speed, constantly changing gear. Difficult to ever find the right gear selection, but one rider who has is Krystyna Kulczynski. She's won a sprint already. She was third last time through. She is looking good. She was disappointed last week. She's putting on a show. She's got one teammate. This is great for her teammate. We know how well Shayna Paulus can sprint behind. This is absolutely crucial. It's giving Shayna Paulus from that 18 riders behind, or 17 should I say, the opportunity to rest. And she's opened up a 6-second lead. Now the question for me is, will Kulczynski carry this through? She's clearly going to take this one. She's still holding steady. Embering, Nelson, Williams, Varstrom opening up their sprints behind. She crosses the line. I have a feeling she might just ease things off, but maximum points there. Second place there for Jackie Godby. Third for Lethbridge. Estrate in fourth. So confirmation, Kulczynski takes the win there with 10 points. Godby, Lethbridge, Shallow, Mora, Embering, Estrate and Cecilia Hansen. 8 of the finest riders you'll ever get to see on Zwift Racing in esports. But she's got to watch out here, Kulczynski. She knows that's the thing. You get that slingshot effect. The bunch isn't big enough to get on the wheel. But look at that. She uses an aero power-up to get straight back in the wheels. That is Zwift riding at its best. Let's have a look at the replay.
A real masterclass there from Kulczynski, using the power-up to get back on. But just seeing this replay, she used her draft power-up going into the arch. She knew she would get a new one, but just look how fast and furious it was for the placings behind. Godby taking that one. It really was shoulder to shoulder, neck and neck. Riders, they know the importance of trying to pick up points. The last opportunity in the intermediate sprints. Now it all comes down to those big points at the finish line. And there we see Heino race team 2 points behind our current leaders, Aeonian, with 48. Team Swedish Swifters there with 40. 2024, courtesy of another 10 points from Krystyna Kulczynski, have moved up, from 5th place up to 4th. Canyon Esports with 24 points. Beast Mode Powered by Rose with 20. Saris with a 12. Enshored 8. ATP Racing Venom with a 2. And Kirkmeyer still with that solitary point.
Indeed. Kirkmeyer in at 10th there, nobody in this front group. And a reminder, as we head in to the denouement, the final few Ks of this race, 3.4 kilometers to go. This is round 3 of the ZRL, of the Zwift Racing League. This is the Two Bridges Loop in Watopia. It's the first time we've been in Watopia. This is the women's race. We had the men's race earlier on. This has been far more selective here. We have 18 riders in this front group, but crucially, in terms of the points on offer, it is Team Heino with 4 there. Team Swedish Swifters, what a night they are having. They've got Bjarhed, Embering, Sparstrong and Frisk in this front group with 4 riders. And Aeonian also with 4. They are the team with most to gain. And Hannah, this is so difficult to call. We've seen a lot of riders so far show their hand, but also, conversely, a lot of very, very good riders holding back a little bit. 2.8 Ks to go.
One of those riders that stands out for me is Cecilia Hansen of Heino. We haven't seen her make a huge effort at all tonight. We haven't seen her put her nose in the wind, exert some energy. She's just been sitting there nice and quietly, nice and tightly in the pack, saving as much energy as she possibly can. So for me, it's going to be a really fascinating finish coming into here. What have these riders got left? Who has got the kick and the punch to the line? Also, let's not forget, we have the final ascent of this climb starting to come up as we are in the lower slopes now, as the gradient starts to ramp up.
Yep, 2.3 Ks to go. Nelson also in that group. She's a rider we've not talking about too much. So 2 riders from Saris in there. My mistake. So Nelson, who was 8th last week, is there with Jackie Godby. And Nelson has got a very, very good finish on her. But one rider who has been very attacking today, who has used her power-up, is Kristen Kolczynski. She used that aero power-up to get back. Maybe she's going to help out her teammate, Shayna Powless, in terms of getting up there in the sprint. But Williams has now gone clear. The British rider for Canyon Esports, she's got Stephanie Zidlik, the American, in that group as well. But look who's going over the top. Shallow now. Shallow looking very, very good, the German. She's done this every single lap, but she is romping away up this climb. Julia Shallow, 8.9 watts a kilo, 68 ride-ons as well. This is a monstrous performance up this climb.
A huge, meaningful attack there from Julia Shallow. It's a now do-or-die effort from her. You see the heart rate. She's almost reaching her maximum, 195 beats per minute. But look at this. It's almost like a team time trial from the team of Heino, as they have 4 riders all up towards the front. Vicky Whitelaw, Lethbridge, Mara. We see Hansen up there as well. So Heino, they're really trying to get a grip of this this finish, as we have 1.6 kilometers to go. They started to put some riders into difficulty. Daniela Estrate of Aeonian just a second back, as is Shayna Powless.
Well, this group now spread over 4.5 seconds. We're coming into the last 1,400 metres, but what a demonstration of riding here by the women in red. 4 riders in that front group for Heino, the dominant team of the last 2 seasons. This is the last time we'll see the Super Tuck. We're moving well over 58 k's an hour here. The final opportunity to bring some air into those lungs, which are burning, just to feel a little bit less pain in those burning legs as well. 1 kilometre to go here. 18 riders out in front. 4 from Heino, 3 from Swedish Zwifters, 2 from Canyon, 2 from 2024, and 4 from Aeonian.
As we see, I think a reduced group here, Matt, because some riders, they still haven't made it back on after that huge effort from Heino. And look at this, 2 riders who are starting to open up the gap, Whitelaw and Williams, against Canyon Esports and Heino. But look at this, a huge acceleration from Caroline Williams. She starts to open things up, Matt, with 500 meters to go.
500 metres to go. Ada Geest is out of the back at the moment. She's suffering at 4 seconds, but it is Caroline Williams. Vicky Whitelaw is there. Canyon Esports are leading. What a move this is by Williams. She's got 3/4 of a second, but look at the group behind. Look at the pace of Estrate. Estrate is coming through. She overhauls the Brit. The finish comes into sight. Hey, now opening up as well. Godby is there. Godby coming through. It looks like Godby's going to take this one. What a win from Godby there. She crosses the line in first place. What an amazing performance by the rider from Team Saris. Times her sprint to perfection to take the win, breaking the streak of Aeonian. What a race that was. And there she is, the Stars and Stripes. She's a powerhouse. She showed her hand earlier on, but had enough to make it as the winner today. What a ride by Jackie Godby.
Absolute incredible there from Jackie Godby, timing that one so right. She was waiting, she was patient, she didn't react immediately to the move of Caroline Williams, and there we go, our top 10 of the evening. Jackie Godby taking the victory, with Cecilia Hansen in second. Powless there, great result there for the rider from 2024 with third. Daniela Estrate in fourth. Kristen Kolczynski, after her incredible evening of racing, in fifth. Alice Lethbridge there in sixth. Julia Shallow of Beast Mode Power by Rose in seventh. Courtney Nelson making it 2 riders from Team Saris in the top 10. Caroline Williams of Canyon Esports with the 9th, and rounding out the top 10 to put 3 riders from Team Heino. Melanie Maurer taking the 10th place there. But what a race that was. Incredible. Godby, I mean, what a sprint to the finish line, and to open up such a huge gap. And you look at her average watts, Matt, on the right hand side, she's got the lowest of the average.
Well, she certainly has. Well, somebody else that's going to have to do a little bit of a sprint is yourself, Hannah. Thank you very much for commentating through what was an absolutely spectacular race. Godby is back, and very shortly it'll be Hannah as well. But back to Si Richardson on the sofa. I need a bit of a lie down.
Well, yeah, I am on the edge of my seat again. That was some finish, wasn't it? Absolute fireworks there to the last moment. Congratulations to Jackie Godby of Team Saris for taking a fantastic individual win. We, of course, wait for the team results. They're going to be super interesting after we got that select group of 19 coming into the final lap, with some big teams well represented. who was going to come out on top. But we'll just go back to that final sprint first of all. We had the attack, the late attack from Caroline Williams from Canyon Esports, my mistake, who got caught with about 200 to go. Then it was Daniela Estrati of Aeonian who looked like she was going to take over. Here she comes now, look, just catching up with Williams, looking like she'd got a really good slingshot. But then Jackie Godby opened the afterburners. That was a phenomenal sprint finish there. Absolutely steamrolled the opposition. You've got to say, that looked like a savage race as well. Much more attritional than the men's race there. Largely down to some spectacular individual performances, I think, such from Kristen Kulczynski of 2024 and Julia Shallow of Beast Mode, really trying to shake things up lap after lap, I think, on that big climb. And despite the hard work from those two, they didn't necessarily net all that much in terms of intermediate sprint points, but it did create a very, very select group. Julia Shallow was on her own, isolated there. Kulczynski with Shayna Paulus for company, both doing well at the finish. So that will be very, very interesting indeed to see again how those results stack up. Now, Hannah, that was some sprint for you getting back onto the sofa, but still breathless from commentary, I would imagine. That was some result, wasn't it?
Incredible. What a race we had. It had a mix of everything, didn't it? From riders taking it up early, riders taking it on several times. Julia Shallow and Kristen Kulczynski. I think you can't separate them for rider of the evening. No, that was great, wasn't it? Now, we've got the results for the team coming up. I can't predict this one, Hannah, if I'm honest. Actually, yes, I can. Heino, there you go. That was a pretty impressive move. All four of them going clear over that final climb. Aeonian a distant second this week, actually. And then Team Swedish Zwifters, that's the result of the season for them so far in third with 100 points. Then Team 2024, largely down to Kulczynski, you've got to say, there were only two of them in that group, weren't there, of 19. So that's incredibly impressive. And likewise, Team Saris only had two there in that final split. Canyon Esports down in 6th this week. But there we go, Heino back on top, our defending champions, aren't they? Were you expecting to see the strength from them at the end there? That was incredible timing and took real precision. Also organised, communicated between the riders and the team manager there to make sure that they could probably sense that riders are really starting to be on the back foot and starting to go into that red zone, starting to find it difficult over the top of the climb. And you saw Heino, they had so much left in the tank to really break things up and do the damage. For them, the individual result wasn't important. It was important to make sure that they had as many riders in the high scoring points as possible. And they did that to perfection. I mean, they ran away with that tonight, didn't they?
They did indeed. Now, speaking of perfection, this next segment is anything but. Many of us will have been watching tonight to get some useful tips ahead of the ZRL community races tomorrow. 18,000 of us are signed up to the ZRL at the moment. And GCN have a team too. A team that, it must be said, are making some rookie mistakes. And last week was a particularly poor showing. Frankly, I don't really want you to watch this next segment, but I think you're going to anyway. Okay, so today we have got 2 laps of the Kaspat circuit. I watched the pros racing last night. It looked savage. It splits bits on the first lap and then kind of stayed together for a big chunk of the second, at least the groups did, and then it split again, of course, on the run into the finish. So positioning is going to be key for those first intermediates, and then just hoping that I'm going to be able to get over the Petit KOM. So wish me luck. Getting towards the final KOM. I'm so pissed off. Oh my word, what a total idiot. Like, I mean, honestly, what an idiot. Ollie and I made the split. There were 11 of us on the front group. I was just soft tapping just to recover for the second lap hostilities. I look up, see a little gap, sort of put in a lazy 400 watt turn to close it without realising that the guys on the front have gone full chat, 10 watts per kilo. Now fortunately I had Bridgewood with me until he disappeared. It wasn't him getting dropped, it was his internet getting dropped, which is a cast iron excuse in my book. But anyway, we had Mark Threlford caught me just within sight of the line, so he was in a group from 10 to 20th, and I was 21st, like a total idiot. I'm not cross because I didn't get a result, I'm just cross because I missed out on some fun racing. Instead, I plodded around at 340 watts, which felt miserable. Next week, we're gonna kill it. You watch. Well, yeah, I'm not entirely sure whether you could tell, but I was quite annoyed after that. I've been annoyed all week, would you believe it? And but most annoying of all, Hannah, is I don't entirely think we're going to be able to make amends tomorrow, because well, the women's race was attritional. The men's race was possibly a little bit more tactical in that it was a much bigger group, wasn't it, contesting the finish. But do you think that was purely down to the antics of Kulczynski and Shallow that just ripped the women's race apart?
I certainly do, but we know from the different races between the men and the women, the tactics, they're very different. The dynamic of the racing is very, very different. So although there was a bigger group going into that finish and much more of a bunch sprint, for the women, you know, it never really let up. On the climb, you could see such a ferocious pace. And on one lap, I think Kulczynski had made 2, maybe even 3 attacks. And that was just, 3 of her several throughout the racing. So for any of the riders who were constantly getting themselves back on, there's only so many times you can make that effort before the elastic really snaps, isn't it?
Well, that's true. But I was kind of thinking that about Kulczynski when I was watching it, and there she is in 5th place on the night as well as an individual. That really is, to my mind, the ride of the night, actually.
With no power up into the finish either, because she used it sort of after the final intermediate sprint. She used the aero power up to get herself back in terms when she just slightly started to lose the wheels. But this was her winning and taking the final intermediate sprint of the night, using the draft power up. She got a new power up through that archway. She used it more or less immediately. So for 5th, in that finish where it's fast and ferocious with no power up, that is really, really impressive.
Yeah. One of the things that struck me most about watching Kulczynski and Shallow as well is that the cadence they use, incredibly low. I mean, remarkably low. They're doing, 6 watts a kilo, but at 50 RPM. Do you think that's like an indoor thing where you can just ride an indoor trainer in a slightly different way? Because you wouldn't see people out on the road doing that typically, would you?
You certainly wouldn't. When you're sort of coming through the ranks, especially if you've come into the sport from an early age, you're always taught to sort of keep a nice constant cadence of sort of 80 to 90 RPM. But this is a different discipline altogether, and for these riders, they're doing what works for them. So there's no right or wrong having high cadence versus a really low cadence. It's what works for the rider, which is I quite like that it doesn't matter how you ride, how you exert yourself, just being able to get your effort out. Is the important things, and all different approaches work.
That's right. We can see the riders just cooling down behind us there. That's
all communicating with each other between the team of dissecting the race, I'm sure.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, we know who the big winners are. We can see the finish line points actually coming up. I'm quite interested to know who the losers are going to be actually from tonight, whether there's going to be anyone dropping out of the leaderboard. So there we go. These are finish line points. Jackie Godby obviously taking the win. Cecilia Hansen, that was an amazing ride from her, wasn't it, from Team Heino. Shayna Paulus, teammate of Kristin Kulczynski. And then Daniela Estrate in 4th there for Aeonian. Not a great night for Aeonian really, in that they've been counting on the finish line points from Aardegeest in particular, but yeah, only 12th and 13th for Aardegeest and Verharum. Would you say that they're kind of perhaps the I hesitate to say big losers because they're in 2nd, but you know what I mean? Like it's not quite the performance they would have been hoping for, I suspect.
Not, but it's also a very different course tonight, and it's a lot more climbing and elevation than we had last week. They had made a lot of earlier efforts in the intermediate sprints, and to be honest, when you looked at that run-in with 2 kilometres to go, Los Aregis was a few seconds off the back. So for her to get herself back into contention, using a lot of energy to do so, is still impressive that she made it into the top 15 tonight. Let's not forget Monali Keller from Aeonian in the top 20. So 4 riders in the top 20. I could say it's still very, very, very impressive. It was just that last surge, the last haul from Heino with the big scorers, and that's what makes the difference.
Yeah,
there.
Absolutely. Now, we saw it was a great night tonight for 2024. Just to say, actually, in real life, they had some amazing news this week. One of their athletes, Amanda Coker, has just smashed the 24-hour record. She rode an incredible 512.52 miles, smashing the previous record of only 439 miles. So yeah, that is some effort, and I would imagine she'll be teeing up the 24 hours Zwift record at some point soon, especially with that team track record in esports currently. So yeah, congratulations to her. Now, should we have just a quick look ahead at what is coming up next week? Because if you thought tonight was kind of hilly, we have got possibly the toughest race of the series, I would think, the Tour of Do It Well, which is in virtual Yorkshire here in the UK. It's actually the reverse of the World Championships course from 2019, and there's more climbing in this. In fact, there's twice the amount of climbing next week as to what there was this week. And then before we lose that graphic, we've obviously got that team time trial. We heard Lois Arges say earlier that was going to be the weak link for Aeonian, but I'm wondering, are we going to see different style of racing next week, where if we've got double the amount of climbing? And they're punchy climbs, aren't they? Really steep, short, horrible climbs.
They're nasty, aren't they? And let's, don't be surprised to see some teams change riders to suit the course for next week. Bring in some more of your more pure climbers into the mix. Mary Wilkinson for Canyon Esports. I can expect that she'll be making a return to the ZRL. So I think the important thing is having the roster of riders to make the changes depending on the course, and it's going to be a difficult one, but this is what the ZRL is great about, because you want to find the teams that come out on top come the end of the season are those who are well-rounded, who can perform on the flat courses, the hilly courses, the team time trial in there, and the rouleur punchier courses. So this is what we're experiencing. This is what we want to see.
Well, indeed we do. So we will be past the halfway point in the ZRL series as of now, in fact. And in the women's, Team Heino look like they are gathering momentum to defend the title that they have held for the previous 3 seasons. In the men's race, it's Next Esport PB Enshored that looking like they are the team to beat, whereas Team Canyon Esports are slightly struggling to hold on to their coattails at the moment. But as Hannah said, it could all turn around next week with a particularly difficult race around virtual Yorkshire. Join us here next Monday night for some more spectacular ZRL racing.